A lot of people were hoping that Glenn Youngkin was going to fix Virginia, but just because the governor is a Republican doesn't mean that they can change the legislature. And as long as there are Democrats in Virginia and a lot of influence, yeah, you're not going to get everything you want. So now we have this story. The Virginia Senate has rejected 3 bills that would ban sex changes for minors. And we're going to talk about that, plus a bunch of other stories pertaining to what's happening with kids in schools, with critical race theory, with gender theory, gender ideology, and things like that. Because joining us today is a man who has a personal stake in this fight and personal experience. We are joined by Jeff Younger.
Hey, everybody.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Younger. My son is James, and my ex-wife has been trying to transition him to a girl since he was 2 years old. And recently, the Texas Supreme Court allowed my ex-wife to move my son to California to transition him.
And that's is California a sanctuary for gender transition?
It's a sanctuary state. It's Senate Bill 107.
So we are going to talk about that, plus a bunch of similar issues, because actually the Post-Millennial had a bunch, and Libby's hanging out with us today as well.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Libby Emmons with the Post-Millennial. Glad to be here.
So before we get into it, head over to timcast.com, become a member to support our work directly. Click that Join Us button if you appreciate the work we do. Not only will you get access to exclusive uncensored segments from this podcast, but you will help us with our cultural endeavors. Freedomistan is coming along. I've got photos. I should post them. I'll post them after the show. I'll try to remember. But they're amazing. This is going to be super, super incredible. The new space we have, the new shows we're doing, morning shows with women, kind of like The View, but sane women, not unhinged. And we're trying to create physical spaces as well. So we have a coffee shop in the works. A lot of design work is happening. And we're delayed on the coffee product, unfortunately, because there's a bag delay or something. But it's happening, and it's all thanks to you. We need to create physical spaces where people can come together, make allies, share ideas, and that's what we're doing thanks to you. So don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. And we also got Ian Crossland hanging out.
What's up, everybody? Happy to be here. Maybe we'll play it later on the show. I saw some deep fakes of my voice going around.
So a friend of mine sent me a deep fake voice generator. It is the creepiest and scariest thing I've ever seen. It took 2 seconds to upload a clip of Ian's voice, and we can make Ian say anything.
And they will. Oh, they will.
Now here's the best part. When I tried it on me, it didn't work.
Why not?
Really? I have no idea, but I'm glad it didn't.
Really?
Yeah, it didn't work.
It just sounded bad?
It doesn't sound like me at all.
Wow.
It weirdly just doesn't sound like me. And I'm like, okay, that's a good thing. Maybe I got a weird voice and I talk like a weird person.
You're immune to the Matrix. Nice work.
Well, maybe there's something like most people talk a certain way, so the AI takes a person's voice and applies it to like a standard set of like an algorithm that applies to most people and then generates it. And for me, it just didn't really work.
Cool. Maybe we can listen to those later.
We will definitely play those. We also got Serge pressing the buttons.
Yo, what's up, everybody? How you guys doing? Serge.com.
Let's get started with your story, actually, Jeff. For those that don't know what's happening with you and your son, do you want to give us the 101?
Sure. So starting about 2 years old, my ex-wife decided to transition my son to a girl. We were still married at the time, and I told her she couldn't do that. She's a pediatrician, and she forced me out of my house, filed for divorce, and then began to really in earnest try to transition my son. She began to present him to the world as a girl. She changed his name without my consent, with no legal basis to do that. My son eventually, at 3 years old, we're still heading towards divorce, tells me that mommy says I'm a girl. So I took the first iPhone video I'd ever taken. And if you go on YouTube, you can find it. Just search for Mommy Says I'm a Girl. It went everywhere. I'm an Orthodox Christian, so it also went all over Eastern Europe, and Russian television got a hold of it. They were all perplexed. Like, they think of the Texas as a Bible Belt. How can this be happening in this religious part of the country? So then we get to trial. The psychology community turned completely against me. All of them lied at trial. So far, I've been able to prove all these psychologists have lied, so all their testimony has been thrown out.
What were they lying about?
Whether my son wants to be a girl or a boy. In the initial psychological investigation, they tried to cover for my wife by saying she wasn't trying to transition my son. And on that basis, that I had made a false accusation that she was trying to transition him, gave me less than standard possession time with my son. So then we go to another trial in 2019 after the school started transitioning my son behind my back. So I take my son to school, and in boys' clothes, they give him a dress, make him use the girls' restroom. And it turns out there's a loophole in all the 50 states around psychology that allows psychologists to not inform parents. Parents actually don't have a legal right to the medical and psychological records of their children. I can explain that later. So they used that law to transition my son without my consent. And I found out about it. I filed grievances with the school district. They said they did not violate my parental rights by transitioning my son without my consent. So we wound up going to a 2019 trial in this little courthouse in Dallas, Texas. And the top experts in the world on transgender science from both sides showed up in this courtroom. Only my experts testified because the depositions that I gave the experts on the other side was so devastating they would never put them in front of a Texas jury. I'll give you an example. Johanna Olson Kennedy, who runs the largest gender clinic in the United States, I directly asked her, how do you justify cutting healthy body parts off of children? And she said, well, if they're causing psychological distress, they're not healthy body parts, so we cut them off. I asked, how many total mastectomies have you referred out for pubescent girls? And she said over 250. So they didn't want to put that in front.
How many hands and feet did they chop off of body dysmorphic individuals?
Body dysmorphic people. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Joanna Olson Kennedy also said that if girls end up wanting to have their breasts back, they can just get fake ones when they grow up.
She did.
So, but let's slow down and go back to the beginning. I mean, how does this begin? How did your wife decide that your son, in her mind, why is she saying that your son is actually trans?
Well, I first noticed it when she would put him into timeouts and she'd say things like, don't be a boy, the monsters only eat boys, and weird stuff like this. Oh, yeah.
What?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
But why is she doing it?
But she testified in court to this. This is what she's testified. I don't believe this answer, but I'm going to tell you what she swore to in front of the judge at the 2019 trial. She said, first, James asked for a girl's meal in a McDonald's Happy Meal, the girl's toy in a McDonald's Happy Meal. Second, a few days later, he asked for a silver purse at Target that had a multicolored unicorn on it. And James is a painter. He's still a painter. And so he wanted this purse. And at that point, she thought he might be a girl. That's what she testified to.
Because he liked unicorns?
Mm-hmm. I don't believe any of these
don't like
answers.
unicorns?
Yeah.
Well, I used to pretend I was Wonder Woman. I would dance around in my backyard swinging the invisible whip because I wanted to be an actor because I'm creative.
Yes.
And my parents had freaked out and been like, maybe that means, like, no, you're creative. Yes, you can pretend to be anybody, anything you want to be.
Yes, you can. Yeah. And children will conform themselves to their parents' wishes in all sorts of ways. And my son has told court-appointed psychologists, 4 of them, that the reason that here's the other fact that's really important for you and your audience to know. My son only presents as a girl with his mom. He's never presented as a girl with me or anywhere else at church or anywhere. It's only when he's with his mom that he does this. So he's just told them straight up, Mommy doesn't love me if I'm not a girl. He's told them that over and over again.
Told the judge that?
Told the court-appointed psychologist.
What happened?
They all recommended that he be transitioned to a girl, all of them.
Mommy doesn't love me if I'm not a girl. This is what he said.
Yes.
That's like that implicates the mother.
I know. What precipitated me losing my sons, all contact with my sons, last year in July, was my son just straight up told his counselor that he doesn't want to be a girl. He's getting embarrassed wearing dresses at school. She didn't even acknowledge that he said it. So he had an Apple Watch, and he recorded himself. He said, I'm going to record telling you this. And
Your son did?
Yes. And she totally freaked out, threw him out of the office, and initiated a CPS investigation against me, and told the court that I had forced him to say that.
How old is your son now?
10. He was 9 when he said that. Yeah.
Did you force him to do it?
No. He did ask me if he could record. And I said, Texas is a one-party recording state. But our family's not sneaky. So if you're going to record people, you should tell them that you're recording them. So just tell her that you're going to record her.
So where is it? Where's the story currently at now? He's your ex-wife took him to California.
The judge allowed her to move to California. She doesn't have to tell me where my sons are. So all I know is that they're in LA County. The only way for me to see my sons is to arrange for supervised visits in LA County. Okay? And it has to be someone that's acceptable to the court. So the judge will be able to pick who that is. No matter who I pick, they won't let me do it. She doesn't have to tell me any medical procedures that she's doing. She doesn't have to tell me where they go to school. I'm actually prohibited from even knowing those things.
Wow.
Yeah. So I haven't seen them in about a year and 6 months now.
Why both kids? Like so 2 kids, you said one's 10 and then one
They're both 10. They're twins. Yep. And they're not identical.
And so she's saying one is and one is not trans?
Yeah, and this is something that she did with her daughters. So if you want to know, like, when I realized I was in trouble, it was during her pregnancy. We made a decision to have children. We're about 2.5 years into the marriage, and I discover everything she told me about her daughters was a lie. So she had told me that her daughters were adopted. Well, her younger daughter was adopted from her brother, who's a 3-time convicted felon in California, had to flee the state because if he gets convicted again, he'll get life.
Oh.
Who exposed this child to methamphetamine in the womb and when she was a newborn, and had all these developmental problems. So I didn't know that. I probably would have still married Anne, knowing that, right? Because it's good to adopt orphans like that. I'm all for that. But her other daughter was from a sperm donor, and I would not have married her had I known that.
Why not?
So-
Why not?
Well, it would be like she wants to have kids without a man, without a father.
Interesting.
Yeah, and both of the girls, I didn't know this either. Both Anne's sister is a lesbian, and both of these girls had been raised only around women. Like I remember going out and running, foot races with the girls, because she basically abandoned her girls to me. So like I am the one who had to take them to school, do all their homework. Everything, all the chores in the house. She worked 80 hours a week at her practice, right? And so I got these girls that I had to raise. So we go out and run foot races and stuff like that, and they just couldn't believe that I was winning. Like they didn't know like boys can run faster than girls generally.
Wow.
They just had not been around any men. And Anne thought that was actually very funny that they were learning that and didn't know that. But they were 10 years old and is just discovering that for the first time.
Sounds a lot like that book that we bring up periodically, the one that's in front of you.
Yeah.
Genderqueer.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you read that one?
I have not read it.
I read
have
that.
heard about
I
it.
bought a copy of that and
you
read
read
it
it?
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a story of how this woman is not. She says she's non-binary, but it's an abuse story.
Yeah.
She couldn't read till she was 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
She had to use old crusted pads with blood flaking off, and she
Wow.
smelled so bad because of it. The counselor called her in and said, "You have a hygiene problem." So it's no wonder she ends up,
Of course.
distressed.
Well, and the book ends like the most triumphant part of the book is when she's deciding that she's going to come out to her middle school class
Yeah,
and like tell all of her students that she's
which is
non-binary, which is
the-
like, why does anyone need to do that?
Why
Yes.
these people want to be around children so much is odd.
It's odd and sort of distressing. Yeah.
But so you're. I remember when the story first broke about the court case and the videos with your son and all that stuff.
Yep.
But your son's 10 now. I mean, 10-year-olds have a decent amount of lucidity.
Yes.
So is he resisting? Is he rejecting this? Is he complaining about it?
Well, remember the last time I saw him was when he resisted, and they took him away from me permanently and gave me supervised visitation. I get less visitation than convicted pedophiles in Texas.
You know what's crazy too, though, is early on in the story, I remember reading in the Federalist,
Yeah.
there was a woman who was the mom of some friends of your son, who said that when he was over at her house, he wanted to wear boy clothes, and she like gave him boy clothes,
Yes.
and he just wanted to do rough and tumble boy things.
That's his normal state.
And her testimony, she was not allowed to testify to that.
No,
in
she
court.
wasn't.
They wouldn't let her.
Why would they
speak
not?
her piece?
Why?
I don't know why they wouldn't let her do it, but they wouldn't. They wouldn't
maybe Jeff
accept
does.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't understand how family courts work and what the incentives are in family courts. People think of them as, an objective judge and this sort of thing. But the way that family courts are managed is they prevent you from presenting contrary evidence. That's why I've never been allowed to select a psychologist for my son. The courts will never allow me to do that. The courts pick the psychologist who will then present the evidence to the court, right? Now, fortunately, I've been able to record them. I've been able to gather evidence and actually prove that they perjured themselves, so they've had to throw out all this evidence. But it's taken a lot of work and it's cost me a lot of money to do that, right? And most people can't do that. So family courts basically work off of fabricated evidence. That's number one. Number two, there's really no appeal from family courts. So family courts, unlike normal, like civil courts or criminal courts, there's almost no appellate options out of a family court. So the judges operate with no oversight and just do whatever they want. And third, and this is the big one, there are massive federal programs that were instituted in the late 1970s that pay states trillions of dollars to tear families apart. So it's so innocuous when I tell you, be like, this is a great program, But like in Texas, we get 66 cents on the dollar put into the Texas Treasury for every dollar of child support that's paid. Right? So the state is now highly incentivized to issue the maximum amount of child support. That's why almost all divorces got 50-50 prior to the 1980s. And there was this skyrocketing of divorces where one parent loses custody. And that was to maximize Title IV-D reimbursements to the states. In Texas, it's $500 million to the Texas budget.
If the state is profiting off of child support?
Correct. And in most states, the Judicial Retirement Fund is funded from this money. So the more child support that's issued from the family courts, the larger the judicial retirement. It's a massive program. It's the size of the largest defense programs. So the incentives are absolutely huge.
To get people to pay child support?
Correct.
Even married people, to get them to break up and then have to pay each other child support?
Absolutely, yeah. So because you would think the best child support would just be 50-50 custody and let people raise their kids. The best child support is to raise your own kid. That's the best child support. But they don't do that. Most states actually have laws prohibiting the courts from doing that. Texas has a family code in which it's assumed to be in the child's best interest that one parent get 24% of the time. And the reason 24% was chosen precisely is it maximizes Title IV-D reimbursement to the state at 24%. Okay?
How's the maximization function?
Yeah.
How does it come out at 24%?
So it has to do with how the state calculates child support. So Texas has one of the worst child support systems in the state. It doesn't take into account the income of both parents, and it doesn't take into account the amount of time you spend with the child. So there are fathers out there with 49% of the time that are paying maximal child support still.
Wow.
But again, that maximizes the reimbursement to the state. I have a friend of mine, him and his wife came to an agreement to do 50-50 parenting, no child support, because he watches the kids a lot while she travels for her work. And so it all worked out, and they decided it's just better to do it this way. The state of Texas sent an attorney to argue in the case that they should not be allowed to do 50-50 custody.
I read a story about some celebrity guy who had to pay massive child support. And then he and the wife both went to the court together as friends and said, hey, he's no longer working and doesn't have this money anymore. So we both agree it should be lower. And the court said no.
They won't do it.
Because they get a cut.
They get a huge kickback. Yeah.
Wow.
Now there's an even more evil program that's related to this, Title IV-E. Title IV-E pays the states to adopt out orphans.
What do you mean adopt out orphans?
So
Like put them
whenever
in foster care or
whenever
whatever?
CPS takes a child from someone and then adopts them into a good family, they get Title IV-E reimbursement funds, and it's a lot of money. It's like $50K per child.
The state gets that money?
Yes, it goes into the state budget.
And where does it come from?
Federal government.
Interesting.
Yep. So what will happen in Texas is some satellite office of CPS will get low on budget, and they'll go and find a white baby under 2 years old, no medical problems, from working class parents who can't afford a lawyer, and then they take the child and adopt it out, and then they get $50,000 for their budget. That's how they do it.
Wow.
There's massive incentives to split up families in this country, and that's why you've had the explosion of divorce and rancor. So now you have the majority of children in America are being raised in fatherless homes. We passed 50%.
Look, it sure does seem like there is a system in place, whether intentional or not, to reduce the population.
Unquestionably. This is the whole, you talk about this, you call it a conspiracy theorist, right? But they're blatant about it. They're absolutely blatant about it. But I think the agenda is not only population reduction, but also to reduce the political power of the middle class, right? If you've been to Europe, most of you have been to Europe. I've been to Asia a lot as well. Nobody cares about free speech there.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about gun rights there. There's one place in the world where people care about free speech and gun rights, and that's the American middle class.
Yep.
They have to disempower the American middle class to get rid of these things. And so the best way to do that is to take fathers out of the homes.
Yeah, well, that's where you start breaking society down.
That's right.
Destroy the family unit.
100%.
I mean, there's also definitely marriage disincentives.
I blame Reagan.
We were talking about
divorce.
no-fault divorce.
Yeah.
But there's also all of these, there's tax breaks for you if you're a single parent.
Yep.
And then if you're married, you don't get those tax breaks.
That's right.
Wow.
And it's a lot easier to get onto state-sponsored health insurance programs unless there's two of you. If you're married, it's harder to get on them because you automatically make a little bit more money.
Yep. In Texas,
but if you're
you can't
single,
if you're
you
married.
can.
Yeah.
You can't get on the state plan.
There was something about this I learned earlier that in Texas, I believe it was you need both parents to consent to some sort of transgender surgery for a child, but then your wife or your ex-wife took the kid out of the state in order to bypass Texas state law. So at that point, you would think Texas would be like, hey, hell no, that we're going to the federal government. Come on, step in. You can't just leave our state and then break our law against the will of one of our state citizens. I would think that would be the case.
Yes. My case has been carefully reverse engineered by leftist lawyers. It's very clear to prevent me from taking a federal course of action. What they did was, since my judge issued an order allowing her to move to California, it's very difficult for me to go into federal court and challenge a local judge's ruling. There's something called the domestic relations exception in family court, in federal court. A lot of people don't know this, but the federal court just has a rule. They don't take family court cases. They just don't take them. Like I told you, there's no appeal out of family court. You're doomed. Whatever the judge says goes, and federal courts won't take them. There's a very narrow exception to that on civil rights grounds, which I might be able to pull off.
What would that be?
So there's a really good U.S. Supreme Court decision called Troxel. And Troxel establishes 14th Amendment protections for parenting your children. And all of my judges' rulings violate Troxel. So I'd have to get into a federal court. And the big challenge in federal court is it's very easy to dismiss federal cases under Rule 12 of Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. So I'd have to really build an airtight case that would survive a dismissal challenge.
And it's the
I'm
violation.
thinking about that right now.
A violation of the 14th Amendment.
That's right. Yeah.
And
what's interesting is in my 2019 trial that I won, I got 50-50 custody, no child support, and I got 50-50 on all the conservator rights. So she couldn't do any medical procedures without my permission.
I think I remember hearing about that in the news.
Yeah.
But then how did she end up getting to move to California?
Here's how it worked. So she retained the most powerful law firm in the state of Texas, family law firm named Coons Fuller. They're also the largest donor to political campaigns. So Texas has a loophole that you can buy judges, essentially, as long as you donate to political campaigns. Political activity is protected, and law firms cannot be recused from representing in a court, even if they gave them a lot of money. So they gave my current judge over $30,000. Okay, $30,000. So in a transparently corrupt recusal proceeding, they bought a judge emeritus to hear a recusal hearing. And all the judge where I won the trial, her name, it's a 255th District Court. All she did, she went onto Facebook on the official page of the court and said, everyone in my court got a fair trial. Which judges are allowed to say things like that. They're allowed to assure the public that they're performing their public duty. That's not recusable. But on that basis, they recused her. And then I wind up in this other court that this law firm gave $30,000 to. And this judge then systematically stripped me of all my parental rights using temporary orders, which is not legal in Texas, but I have no really course of appeal. In Texas, you actually cannot appeal family court decisions. You can only mandamus them. You can't actually appeal them.
So using these temporary rulings, she's
systematically. And what's interesting,
but then she moves to California as a temporary right?
And so they want to go to final trial now and establish that as a permanent right. That's the idea.
Well, and the thing with California, too, is California has decided that they have no obligation to follow the laws of any other state.
That's correct.
So if by some miracle you ended up having a Texas court say that your sons should come back from California, California would refuse on the basis of their own law.
They won't send them back. They are obligated by law to give my son gender-affirming health care. They have to give it to him. And a judge can consent without either parent consenting. A judge can consent.
That's Scott Wiener.
Yep.
State Senator Scott Wiener.
Do you know if they've begun any medical procedures, chemical or
no? Because
surgical?
I don't get any information. So she's been there since end of December, and I have no information on my son at this point.
It's just this is a federal. We need the federal government to step in.
The only issue with the federal government stepping in is you have the president of the United States who is in favor of child sex changes.
Well, yeah,
and the entire Health and Human Services Department and the Surgeon General.
But let
me pull up this article right here. We have this article from the Post Millennial. Biden's Surgeon General warns that 13-year-olds shouldn't use social media because they are still developing their identity. Chris Elston wrote, Vivek Murthy says he believes 13 is too young for children to be on social media platforms because kids are still developing their identity. What about puberty blockers, Vivek? So I think this shows the hypocrisy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, clearly.
Really fully. Just straight out hypocrisy. Yeah, so you have Vivek Murthy saying that children should not be on social media because they're still developing their identities, but he would also tell you that girls who are minors should be able to get abortions without parental consent, and also that children should be able to determine their own gender identity.
So I'm sure, Jeff, you're familiar with the story of John Money.
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely.
Do you have concerns? I mean, obviously you have concerns for your children over this.
Yeah, I mean, the way I put it to the jury when I was put on the stand was very simple. I said, if my sons go with me, they have a chance at a normal life. If they go with her, they have no chance at a normal life and a good chance of living a life of despair. And that's the choice, that's the Hobson's choice that we're giving all of these children, right? And they're so obsessed with puberty blockers because the cure for gender dysphoria is called puberty. Puberty is the cure for gender dysphoria. Puberty is the process by which you come to identify with the social, psychological, and physical aspects of your sex. That's what puberty actually is. And so they desperately have to block puberty to maintain the gender dysphoria. Over 90% of these kids, if you just don't do anything, just grow into normal adults, small proportion of them become gay, and in line with the normal population, and then a small percentage of them continue to have problems.
This feels like, at least to a certain degree, some of this is experimentation. Like
definitely,
we know from the story of John Money and what he did to what was it, Brian and David were their
Brian
names?
and David.
They both ended up killing themselves in different ways.
Yes.
And it's a horror story. Now that story is particularly horrifying because John Money was forcing them to simulate adult activities on each other when they were very young children.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar with the story, I think most people are. But if you're not, basically you had twins. I think they're identical twins. Were they?
They were identical.
Yeah. And there was a botched circumcision. So John Money convinced the parents, we'll raise one as a girl and one as a boy. And then I think almost immediately it was Brian, or was it was David?
David.
David was the one who
was
made to live as a girl. David knew that he was actually male the whole time, and it caused great distress. So that's my fear. In that thinking, though, there is the argument made by the left that shows gender identity is inherent in the individual, and that if a child is born male but has a female identity or wants to identify socially as a female and you don't do it, you'll end up with that situation.
Well, I have a kind of an unusual take for someone on the right. I'm definitely on the right. And that I do think gender is in many ways socially constructed. And this always freaks people out, right? Like, well, how can you be a right winger and believe that? But
the social characteristics that we have built up around the biological sexes.
Correct, yeah. And in other words, you're born male, but you have to learn to be a man. Your father teaches you how to be a man. You follow in the footsteps of your forefathers, and you learn how to be a man to assume your duties and rights and responsibilities as a man in your society. And that has to be taught to you, right? That kind of thing has to be taught to you. But like everything else, the left wants to make it either or in these very strange ways. Sure, there is a genetic component probably to gender identity. There's a genetic component to all human behaviors, right? It comes up a lot in the context of being gay. People say, well, people are born gay. They're not born gay. There is a genetic component to being gay. They know exactly what the genetic contribution is because billions of dollars have been spent on it. It's approximately equal to your food preferences, and you're totally in control of what you eat. So there's just because something has a genetic component doesn't mean it's outside of your volition.
Yeah, your genetics can be altered by your environment. They can be turned on and off.
Yes. I think this is phthalates in PCBs. There was I've had the conversation with a lot of conservatives, and
you're bringing up good stuff. This is exactly.
Yeah, we've had people on. I think even James Lindsay, and I've talked to a lot of these people who say there's no such thing as trans kids, and I say I disagree with that. I think we've already seen the stories. There was a birth control that women were taking that resulted in their female babies masculinizing in the womb, and then invariably as they tracked them, they grew up to become lesbians, and they're like, hey, we just realized that this birth control was actually doing this to the babies in the womb.
Yes.
In the event the woman got pregnant, despite being on birth control, they had masculinized female babies. And so you take a look at the plastics. This is why we've been using glass bottles for all our water. We do have plastic bottles because some people just don't care, but I prefer to put everything in glass because you have phthalates and PCBs, and that's just a couple of the endocrine disruptors that we've got research on. So my hypothesis on this is, you had Bill Maher who said, why are we seeing so many trans kids? You've got so many in California, but not in Ohio. So either, what did he say? Either there's something wrong between the states or we're creating them or something to that effect. And I'm wondering if the reason we're seeing a massive spike in this is, I do think there's a social component because we've actually seen that in research. But I think another component of this may be that we've expanded the use of plastics. Plastic is over everything.
It is.
So phthalates and PCBs in all of our food. Then you've also had these stories about birth control getting in the water supply, can't be filtered out, and then people are drinking it. I think we are living in piles of our own filth in cities, which is making dirty water full of endocrine disruptors of any kind, and you're going to end up with people who are in the womb developing, and their brains are forming, and either through some kind of hormonal imbalance, some kind of chemical alteration through phthalates, a baby is born and they have an inverted gender identity that doesn't match their body.
You can't discount the social contagion, though. I mean, we're seeing like a 4,000% increase in girls who are deciding that they are actually boys. We're seeing clusters of girls all transitioning together.
And there are a lot of stories about people who have taken their children away from these school environments and their kids immediately detransition.
Correct.
And it's also very trendy in some places. Where my son had been going to school in New York City, trans was very trendy, and some of his friends were coming in, like one day they were furries and the next day they were lesbians, and then they were actually trans, and then somebody else was trans because his girlfriend was trans and she was a lesbian now, and like it was a whole thing. It was like a constant, every day there were like different identities going around, and it was very trendy to be part of the whole identity thing.
It's really empowering to get people to believe you're someone you're not. That's part of why I became an actor. It's incredibly empowering. And it's also, they love it. I love it. Everyone, and then you get paid for it. But then these kids, I think they just want that empowerment.
Well, part of it too, though, is we're talking about puberty, right? So Jeff, you brought this up. We were talking about puberty. What is puberty? Puberty is the process by which it's, development. It's the process by which a child becomes an adult. It's a coming of age process, right? We've taken away so many of the coming of age rituals. We've killed our gods. So, we don't have coming of age rituals in our religion anymore at this point in the United States. That's not common. We don't have a lot of confirmations anymore, or bat mitzvahs or anything like this. So what we have for our main coming of age ritual in our country right now is coming out. You can come out as something.
That's like the only American.
It's the American coming of age, right? It's our rite of passage, right? You come out as part of your rite of passage.
I thought it was getting your driver's license.
No, it used to be getting your driver's license, but now that's 16. It's 18 in some
like
places.
They have isn't like quinceañera thing?
Yeah.
Quinceañera, that's like a...
In Mexico, right?
Yeah, in Mexico, that kind of thing. I know that...
Is there a male version of that? I don't know what they do down there.
Well, you do like a 16th birthday party, but it's not the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, this is our main rite of passage. It used to be, I remember when I was a kid, and the whole everybody wanted to lose their virginity as quickly as possible. This was like...
But that's very different from like a bat or bar mitzvah.
Right, yeah, it's very different. But now you can go through a rite of passage of coming out. And what are the things you get to do? You get to change your name. You get to start choosing your own clothes. You get to dictate how other people are going to treat you. You're going to call me by this name. You're going to refer to me even when I'm not there with these very specific, phrases.
It feels like a lot of RPG video games. Your character will start off as like training mode or whatever. So actually, this reminds me of Maple's story, which I don't know if it exists anymore. But your character starts in like levels 1 through 10. You have no specialty. And then once you get to level 10, you get to choose your class. Like, what are you? What are you going to be? And it feels very much like what they're trying to do.
Well, there's one thing. I think video games do play into the social contagion because a lot of boys play girl characters in FPS shooters, mainly because you just don't want to look at a guy's ass playing it when you go to third person. You want to see a girl's ass when you're playing, right? But
third person.
If you play it in switch to third person, you can play it, with a girl character. It's more pleasing to you. The other thing, though, you mentioned these PCBs. We can actually objectively quantify that. So the United States Marine Corps has grip strength data going back to the Revolutionary War. They administered grip strength tests at Tunn's Tavern when they commissioned the Marine Corps. So it literally goes all the way back to the very beginning. So they have the ultimate longitudinal data set. Grip strength among men today is 30% what it was 50 years ago.
Oh no, that's
1/3.
rough.
Not me though. I got good grip.
Hell yeah.
And
Actually,
grip
I play
strength,
guitar, so, you
it
know,
turns
right.
out grip strength is one of the best proxies, physical proxies for testosterone levels.
Wow.
So the Marine Corps won't even let you go to recruit training anymore unless you show up for a year of physical training to prevent training deaths. That's
Wow.
how bad it is.
So the handshake test, that's real.
It's a legit thing. It's a legit thing.
It's plastics,
I've
man.
heard that hanging is some of the best things you can do for a person, like hang from a tree branch and just
Well, that's what the
hang.
Marine Corps has you do. If you have weak grips, just hang.
Really?
Yeah, hang for 20 minutes before you get chow. You don't get to eat until you hang.
Wow.
That's what they make you do. Yeah.
Well, sperm count's also on the decline.
Yeah, which is another great marker, a completely objective marker of testosterone levels.
This is the crazy thing. So if you look back at we used to drink mercury to try and cure syphilis. These things didn't work, but
Yes.
the hope was that you'd poison yourself so much that I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
I can't understand this. Like the people would just die from drinking it. What made them think in any way it would help them? Or like,
Right.
oh well, the syphilis must have got them. But then we have asbestos.
Yeah.
And asbestos actually is fine until you disturb it. But then we started realizing, like, hey, if we're going to start clearing out these buildings and doing remodeling, all of a sudden people are getting mesothelioma. So we get rid of it. Now, here's the problem with PCBs. They've warped our minds. We are now as a society, in a delusional state. And when let's say a person gets hypoxic, you cannot save yourself.
Right.
That's why they say put on your oxygen
That's a
mask
great
before
example.
putting the mask on somebody else.
Yeah.
If our society has been plagued by PCBs, and you wonder why it is that you've got a divide between urban and rural, why the Democrats in the
Yes.
cities believe this and people in the country don't, perhaps it's because the people in the cities are gargling and swimming in endocrine disruptors
Yeah.
that people who are on well water are not.
And I grew up on well water in a farm and ranch in Texas.
So what happens then is, as a society that is, assuming the endocrine disruptors are doing this,
Yeah.
if half of the mind of our society, this body, has been altered in some way,
Yes.
how will you make a sound decision to correct the behavior? A person who is
I actually never thought of that. That's a great point.
Right, our minds. So it's not just this issue. I mean, it's also drugs and everything else.
Sure.
So it's
If-
like if you can't think your way out of it.
Right. If you were on a plane, the reason they say put on your mask before someone else's is because if you're all hypoxic, you die.
Yes.
If one person can get their mask on, they
save
can think
everybody.
straight. They can save everybody. But we're in a place now where half the people aren't wearing their mask. And so when you're with your mask on saying, put the mask on, they're swinging at you and
Yeah.
they're in a
Yeah.
rage and then
Yeah.
just collapsing. You can't vote your way out of it.
Yeah.
You got to appeal to the gut. That's the only way. If the brain can't understand or is incapable from desensitization, you can get through
Yeah.
the gut.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier about the depopulation agenda. You know, I have friends in Europe, and they always make fun of us in America for some of the crazy stuff here, the wokeness, the fact that we pay 3% on our own money, interest on our own money in our own treasury is bizarre. They laugh about these things, and I just tell them, like, maybe you should have some mercy because we're probably the most heavily propagandized population in the history of the world. The most sophisticated propaganda regime ever launched against a people has been launched against Americans. And they can't actually see reality right in front of them. They'll deny the evidence of their own senses. It's a bizarre experience. And I can tell you, running for office, talking to normie conservative Republicans, many of them actually still believe the Constitution constrains the government and that we should make constitutional arguments to restore the republic. And you're like, Constitution hasn't constrained the U.S. government in 100 years. Like it's a
right.
completely irrelevant document. Like, how can you still keep saying these things? And it's because they're heavily propagandized. We should not underestimate how effective the propaganda has been to warp people's visions.
The issue is you've got prominent individuals who make a lot of money just agreeing with whatever the machine wants them to agree with. So to go back to the oxygen mask analogy, if half the people in this country are inundated with PCBs and other chemicals that's damaging their brain or causing them to just have alterations to their mindset, neurodivergence as it were.
Yeah.
Then someone comes along and says, I don't know about that, but if I agree with them, they'll give me money. That's what's happening.
Yeah, the famous observation that it's hard to get a man to change his mind about something if he's being paid to believe it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a very simple concept. But the basic operation of modern propaganda is to demoralize people. But I don't mean it in the sense of making them feel bad. I mean to literally remove morals.
Yes, I was going to ask. Because
Yeah.
people often talk about demoralization, and half the people think you're talking about low morale.
Exactly.
When you're talking about the removal of morals.
The removal of morals, because you can't understand reality without moral reasoning. This is also something that Heidegger talks about. This is why artificial intelligence is impossible, because moral reasoning is required, right? It's required to make judgments about the world, right?
But a big
I wouldn't
part
say
of,
impossible. I would just say it's not going to turn out the way we want it to.
A big part of what's been going on, though,
we could
is
talk.
that the. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I think that in a lot of cases, the goal of whoever's doing this is to remove our ability to make judgments.
That's right.
They want us to not be able to differentiate between right and wrong or good and bad.
Simply because they want the order to maintain?
Well, because they want to get their thing across,
Well, it turns out that discriminating between right and wrong is important to discriminating between red, white, and blue, falling down, going upstairs. Like, the apprehension of physical reality is informed by your morality. It turns out there's a reflexive relationship between the two.
Well,
and by removing this moral judgment, you can remove the ability of people to understand what's happening to them.
And that's what's
Well,
going
well-
on too with the drag story hours and everything. Is
Yes.
you have kids come in, they look around and they're like, "This is super creepy," and then the parents are like, "No, this is totally normal and good."
But explain the AI thing. Why do you think it's not possible?
So what we're really doing with AI is we're doing fancy curve fitting. So, and we put a nice name on it and we do all stuff, but what it is basically doing is curve fitting to very complicated functions. And it can mimic a lot of the decision-making abilities of humans. It can be really effective if it's layered, so-called deep learning, where it's layered. So you're doing essentially curve fitting on curve fitting on curve fitting on curve fitting. But what it can't do is things that humans do. It cannot look at its environment and make judgments independently about its environment. Like, one of the hardest problems in AI is to teach a system to just recognize a kitten. It's a notoriously difficult problem to get it to just optically recognize a kitten, something which a 2-week-old newborn can do.
What do you mean it can't recognize a kitten?
It can't. It turns out that kittens have a fuzzy enough look that's very difficult for them to
Wow.
discriminate it. But yet a child with the kinesthetic perception, once it holds, and remember, we're talking about 2-week-old infants that don't have object permanence. So when you remove it from their sight, they think it doesn't exist
Right.
anymore. That's why you can play peekaboo with kids, because you appear again out of
Yeah.
nowhere, right? They don't have object permanence. So, you could teach a child that age to discriminate a kitten, but you can't teach AI. It's very difficult to do.
We'll get there, I think, though.
And one of the hardest problems is called the location problem. What if you just plop an AI down in a hallway and get it to recognize where it is, figure out where it is? This turns out to be extremely hard without the contextual information provided by innate human knowledge about the world. In some sense, what Kant was talking about, that there are categories of perception by which we structure knowledge, that's not possible for AIs.
Well, I think we just haven't developed the technology to get there. I think it's possible that, have you seen like the Boston Dynamics robot?
Yes.
I think you can put some kind of algorithmic learning system within it and let it mill about, and eventually it'll start discovering and mapping things and then understanding and all that stuff.
No, I don't disagree that it would do that. But what I'm disagreeing with is whether that's intelligence. So
Yeah.
let me give you an example.
I suppose that goes to the question of the soul then, ultimately.
Sorta, but actually we can just restrict ourselves to just mathematical logic. In mathematical logic, there's 2 separate categories of research. One is called model theory, one is called proof theory. When your computers here do mathematics or arithmetic, they don't understand what the numbers mean, right? So it turns out that what mathematicians are actually doing is they're creating what are called formal languages. And these formal languages have 3 particular elements that make them up, and they've been thoroughly studied. Mathematical logic is like the linguistics of mathematics and studies these languages. They have one particular property that natural languages don't have. And that is that every grammatically correct sentence is guaranteed to be true.
What do you mean by that? Elaborate.
So if you follow the rules of algebra, you don't need to know what the numbers mean. You'll get the right answer. As long as you followed all the rules,
Right.
you'll get the right answer.
You could see symbols on a page.
And know that was no. That's called proof theoretic reasoning.
So
we're just using grammar rules.
To simplify, if I understand that 3 as a symbol
Yes.
represents 3 objects, and you
Yes.
can represent that with, say, sticks.
Yes.
Even if I did not know what those represented, if you knew the rules of how the numbers played
You'd
with
still
each
get
other,
the right answer.
Yeah.
So that's how computers do mathematics.
Right. The computer doesn't know that 2
Right.
would be represented by 2 physical objects.
Right.
It doesn't know what 2 means.
It doesn't know what it means.
Yeah.
But humans usually do mathematics using model theory, where the number means something. In mathematical logic, a model is when you actually assign meaning to the undefined terms. So if you're doing geometry, you have points and lines, you give them some meaning. Say a point is a dot on a page and a line is a straight ruler on a page. You give it a meaning. Well, here's the amazing thing about formal languages, that any sentence that's grammatically true, just with proof theory, without any meaning to the terms, is guaranteed to be true in all models. So it turns out no matter how you define points and lines, if the axioms are true in that model, all of the sentences will be true too. So all the theorems are true. That's not true in natural language. So what the AIs are really doing is a kind of proof theoretic way of trying to make their way in the world. Doesn't understand the meaning of what it's doing.
This is
But that's what you would find terrifying about them.
I find the whole thing terrifying because I think where we're headed is I saw an ad for a program that can generate any video. So everybody's been playing with these various AI model art programs. There was like Stable Diffusion. We did a bunch of bits on the show where we Donald Trump hugging Joe Biden, and the photo's awful and doesn't really work. But now you've gotten what's that really popular one that everybody's using?
Chat GPT.
No, the picture generator.
Oh my god.
I use
right,
Night
right.
Cafe. I use
It's called
Night Cafe.
Midjourney.
Midjourney. What was that? You just bumped us off?
It's because I took the mic off and I just hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay,
Guys,
so
sorry.
everybody's using Midjourney, but there's another app that can make videos. Now, obviously, there's a big controversy over deep porn, where that streamer was watching it.
Yep.
And so I think where we're going is, right now, what we can see based on the tools that exist, it is entirely possible to combine these things and say, okay, give me the scene. It's a bar and there's 3 guys and they're about to have a fight.
Yes.
You could create the AI models, then tell the machine to make this scene with these models, and it will. You will be able to write a movie and then press go, and it will apply the script, the character names, the description of everything.
I agree.
The script can be put in, and this is possible literally right now.
Yeah.
All we have to do is combine the components that already exist and are purchasable. You can then take an existing script file, name, description, character, sound of their voice. It's all in the script, and then the machine will render that for you. But here's the thing. That's technology today that we simply need to connect. It already exists.
Yes.
Where we will actually go is you will be sitting in your room and you'll be like, computer, make me a movie about cowboys in 1870 and they awaken a dragon and he's got to save his son. And the machine will just generate everything instantly for you.
Right.
The scary thing to me about how nightmarish it is we are going to, especially with Neuralink and VR, we are going to tell the computer, generate for me a world where I am the king and everyone loves me and I have to fight a dragon. And then you put the headset on and you go into this soulless, masturbatory fake reality.
Yes.
That's where we're headed.
Yes, that's where we're headed.
Yes.
Directly.
I agree with all that.
The question that becomes, what is humanity and what do we want humanity to be? And what do we feel our value is? And do we have a value beyond how we can entertain ourselves?
I read a great quote a long time ago, and it said, if humans ever shake hands with aliens, they will be congratulating each other not because they've overcome nuclear weapons, but because they've overcome the Xbox. That is, everything that we are doing as humans is to trigger our dopamine.
Yes.
You take a look at how humans used to live, and we talked about this with Jack Posobiec, I think. It used to be the norm that you would be out in the middle of nowhere struggling to find food, that you wouldn't always have everything you needed. Then we figured out how to basically isolate everything. So what do? We take pure sugar, combine it with pure fat, and then we guzzle it down until our hearts stop working.
Speak for yourself. I'm
well,
done with
I
that.
don't.
Right? Yeah, I don't either.
I stopped doing that a while ago.
Thank God.
I mean, a dessert here and there is fine, but imagine this, that we've taken beets and we've extracted the sugar and hyper concentrated. That we took an orange, which is delicious and healthy, and we smashed all that juice. That one wasn't even hard.
Right.
So then what we're doing is whatever feels good, but it's just like we're just basically electrocuting ourselves, overstimulating until we die.
That makes me think we were talking about earlier about morality, because I think some people conflate morality and pain. They think that if it's
They do.
painful, that means that it's not moral.
They
but
do.
the reality is a lot of painful things are the moral thing to do.
I want to bring something up in this vein. So this is something my friend sent to me earlier today, and I get this text message with a very weird audio clip of my friend telling me that he's obsessed with Joe Biden. And I'm just like, what is this? It's like not a very political guy.
Okay.
And then he sends me a link to 11labs.io where you can add anyone's voice. I put my voice in, and I'll just leave it at this. I don't want to name anybody because I don't want to, I don't, this is a creepy thing. But there are a variety of different podcast hosts. I've uploaded, I took a sample of their voice, and I was able to deep fake their voice in 2 seconds. I'm not exaggerating.
What?
I clicked add voice, drag and drop MP3, thumb snap, and it does it. So first, I'll show you this. This is speech synthesis from 11 Labs. This is their generic Atom. It's what their default is. I typed in, this is not a real person talking. It's a deep fake. Let's generate, see what it sounds like.
We need volume.
Do we have volume?
Yeah.
It's generating though, so it takes a
Oh,
second.
cool.
Yeah, you gotta give it a second.
This is so freaky. I heard my own voice earlier today. It was
And
so
we're gonna
weird.
play your voice.
This is not a real person talking, it's a deep fake.
Let's try that again.
This is not a real person talking, it's a deep fake.
There you go. So you can type in basically anything. And when I first heard this, I went, well, that's really cool. I've heard robot voices before. I'm not super concerned about it.
Right.
But then we decided to, which one should I play?
Play them all.
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Luke Rudowski, and I don't know how to pronounce my own last name.
That's Seamus Coughlin, by the way. Well, it's a deep fake of Seamus Coughlin.
Of Seamus?
That's Seamus.
That was
yeah.
Luke.
That sounded like Seamus.
That was Luke.
Play that again.
Hi, I'm Luke Rudowski, and I don't know how to pronounce my own last name.
I'm going to go with Seamus.
I think that's Luke.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Ian Crossland, and I'm not wearing any pants today.
That sounds like Chris Poole. No, that
What's
was.
up, guys?
That
I'm Ian
sounded
Crossland,
just like-
and I'm not wearing any pants today.
Oh,
Ever.
ever.
I really like that guy.
That does sound.
He did some really
sounds
great
just
things,
like
like bringing peace to the Middle East.
Yo. You got to let it play, Ian.
Trump is the best president ever. I really like that guy.
You just got
He
to
did
lay
some
there.
really
and take
great
it
things, like bringing peace to the Middle East.
So we have a whole bunch of different. Should I play? I'm gonna.
Yeah, play. It's so
Here
weird
we
because
go.
like,
You guys
I'm
ready?
not responsible for what comes out of that guy's mouth.
Dude, don't tell Wesley I told you this, but we kissed last night. I think we're in love.
I do love Wesley, by the way, but not like that.
So I don't want to play other people's voices that aren't affiliated with this company or the show.
Okay.
But let me just tell you, name your favorite high-profile personality. It is freaky good.
You said
on
you-
some of them.
You got all those voice clips from one MP3 that you sent the machine.
I took like 5 to 10 seconds of different people's voices, uploaded it. There was no
5 to 10 seconds,
and
you can do it.
there was no rendering time.
It's amazing.
No rendering time. You just upload it, and then I pressed. The rendering is when you type in the text, and we were able to make Ian say a whole bunch of stuff. And
Did you try your voice?
my voice didn't work.
Do you have an example?
What?
No.
I'm
Why would that be?
interested.
Because it wasn't. I have no idea. I wasn't able to do it. I put in a not that large of a file because 10 megabytes is the maximum, and what came out sounded just kind of like someone trying to impersonate me by talking quickly, but it didn't sound like me.
Okay.
And my brother tried. It didn't work on him either. So I'm good. I'm glad about that, by the way. But this really freaked me out because some of the voices we were able to generate. And again, the reason I'm not naming these people because you have to imagine what it would be like if someone were to play your voice.
Right.
It is freaky.
So what's the upshot of all of this? So we have
There's no upshot.
We have like
Someone-
no, I
some-
mean there's
look.
like so once we have everybody's voice and deep porn and like all of this stuff, how are you ever going to tell somebody who you are as opposed
Here's
to
what
who
you-
the fake you is?
People are going to take the voice of a famous actress
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to put it in this and they're going to generate her saying things like "I love you,"
Sure.
"I will marry you," "Oh, you're a dream come true,"
Well, that's
and then they're
the
going to put
vanilla
their
version, sure.
Yes, exactly. That's the vanilla version.
Yeah.
Then they're going to put their face on the body.
Of
Then they're
course.
going to put the VR headset on, and that's where we're headed.
That's exactly where we're
real
headed.
life, and now imagine Neuralink, where you can actually trigger sensory perception.
Mm-hmm.
So now people are just telling the machine, create for me celebrity X, and we're on our honeymoon. Wink, wink. You know where this is going, and then.
Dear.
Well, you wouldn't even have to say wink, wink. You would just do the thing.
I'm
because
saying
no
wink,
one's-
wink to the audience
Oh,
here. I get
see.
it. You get it.
What concerns me, I think what you were mentioning earlier,
Because
Jeff,
people
is
do
that
weird stuff when they're by themselves.
like the how the AI doesn't understand context like humans do. So if the creator of the program wants to alter the definition of a word, you're like, I want to go out for a horse ride with my favorite, and they're like, okay, change what it means a horse means slightly, and like there's no way to context. Could the AI not like look at all horses across all time and decide what a horse is?
Yeah, that's what I mean by curve fitting. It can kind of generate a general image of a horse. It can even look at particular aspects of horses and do that. It just doesn't understand what it really is.
Yeah.
And it can't deliver that thing that is like reality. Even with Neuralink, I think, it won't be able to quite do that.
Well, that's what I think Cypher said in Matrix. The reason everything tastes like chicken. I think
Right.
it was Cypher said that, right?
Right.
Everything tastes like chicken because the robots didn't know what
They didn't know what it
things
tastes
taste
like. Yeah.
So the thing then becomes, too, who's going to maintain the machine? Like, who's
Well,
going to...
that's the ethical AI question that comes
this
up a lot.
this was I talked about this on the show a bit. My sci-fi TV show idea. I'll give you the simple version. Did you hear me talk about this before?
I have, yes. Go ahead.
So the general idea is it's like the last city on Earth,
Yep. Mhm.
and for some reason the world is disrepair and destroyed. It's post-apocalyptic. Nobody in the last city knows why. There's like maybe like 10 million people. And so they send out scouting parties. One day a scouting party comes across strange, slender humanoid beings, super thin and tall, in like chrome suits that have advanced technology that just wipe them out and kill them. And then the central conflict is between these groups. The humans think these are aliens that came and wiped out all of humanity. The end of the season is the revelation. And it's like, if this was ever to be made a show, it'd totally be ruined by me telling you this. But the revelation is that these are actually humans. And what happened is around the end of the 2000s, 2099 or whatever, humans began rapidly migrating to pods with Neuralink, just like how cell phones were adopted in a matter of a year or two.
Right.
Everybody had one.
Sure.
Everybody eventually switches to the digital economy and lives in pods where all of their desires are maintained. So all the cities start falling into disrepair because the only thing you need to maintain is the machines that have feeding tubes into people's bellies like the Matrix to keep them alive as they experience paradise however they want.
Right.
But periodically, scout groups have to go out to maintain the machine, refuel it. Humans who did not go into these systems don't know what happened because think about it this way. If you were trying to understand the world right now but did not have the internet, would you know what was going on?
No, you'd have very little idea.
Exactly.
Right.
So if all news migrates to the metaverse,
Right.
and the people who outside of it don't have access to it, people who refuse to join for religious reasons or because they lived in the middle of nowhere and didn't have strong internet, just didn't care.
So this is like, so the city as it exists in your scenario is like a few generations down the road.
A few generations after, so like 2150.
After the pod thing, yeah.
So there's no records.
Right.
They're going online and they're like, for some reason, all internet records just cease around this point,
Right.
and newspapers stop getting printed. Something wiped out humanity. We don't know what.
But it's not that they got wiped out. It's that they're like,
They migrated.
right.
They migrated to a place where they weren't interacting anymore. With right now, people in
This-
cities
a
have
lot of this
have
is
cell
like
phones.
a-
You still know people exist in cities. You can still get a newspaper. You can still drive to the city. But if everybody left the city, went underground into a pod to live forever, or
You know,
for
this
every
is
70
the-
years, you would never see them. All you would know is one day you walked into the city and there were very few people.
This is
Nobody's
the plot
working.
of The Machine Stops, the E.M. Forrester novella. It was written in, 1911, 1918?
That everybody goes underground?
Yeah, everybody goes underground, and they are fed and cared for by the machine. And they basically, like, mating happens by machine hookups.
Yep.
And all of this stuff. And then the machine, it stops. It stops.
100 years later,
And then a whole bunch of wacky stuff happens. 'cause
people
the
are being
machine
born
stops.
in pods who've never experienced the real world and will never leave. And there's only specially designated humans who are reality scouts to make sure the machine is functioning, who go out periodically
Got it.
with advanced technology, because once everyone's in the machine, scientific simulation is rapid and exponential with all the power of the AI that they have. So then they have automation, which can synthesize and replicate and advance beyond people
So
who live outside the machine.
We're looking at a situation where we're going to have Neuralink. We're going to have all these deep fakes and whatnot so that you can create your own reality inside your own pod. And we're going to have world government that keeps us specifically from moving around so that we don't mess up the environment.
You'll own nothing and be happy.
We'll own
But-
nothing. We'll be in our
You could
pods.
be in it right now.
We'll have no freedom of movement.
You could be in it right now for all you know.
And then you're going to have like one person who's who's Winston in 1984, or the son character in The Machine Stops, or Kay in The Trial or The Castle. You're going to have this guy who's just like looking around trying to figure it out.
You're in it right now.
Well, I don't think we're in it right now.
You wouldn't know.
Have any of you seen like a classic sci-fi film called Forbidden Planet from the 1960s?
No.
It's about a civilization that did this. Essentially, they created machines that could satisfy their every desire merely with mental stimulus. And they developed from that machines that had near infinite power. It just, in the 1960s, all happened on Mars, right? And so you find out that they destroyed themselves towards the end of this movie because what they didn't count on was the id, the monsters from the id. The subconscious mind began to make another reality, a terrifying reality that destroyed them. Because one of the things that in such a world where you're in a pod and you can make any world, your unconscious mind could take control. Yeah. And build things in the AI that you don't necessarily want. And I always remembered that phrase from that movie, the monsters from the id.
Elon likes to talk about simulation theory.
Yeah.
And the general idea is that...
He thinks we're in one.
Well, the idea is that within the next 10 years, we will be able to create virtual reality indistinguishable from base reality.
Right.
And if that's the case, it stands to reason it's already been done before us. Or... that if we did and were to create it, it could have been created and we could be in it. So there's a simple mathematical formula.
There's very little differentiation between saying that it's saying that we're in a simulation and it's all been created, and saying that there's a God.
Identical.
Well,
identical on everyone.
I have to point out, this is Nietzsche's idea of the eternal recurrence, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
It's the same concept. He says, look, everything that's been done has been done before, and it occurred exactly the same way.
Well, in the 90s, we just said everything was derivative.
Yeah.
So what I say is it's not a simulation, it's an MMORPG.
What's that?
A massive multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah.
My son was telling me the other day he thinks we're living on the edge of the simulation. And I was like, why do you think we're not in the simulation?
It's not a simulation, it's a game.
Yeah.
I think it's like, if it people say simulation, and I'm like,
right.
I don't know. I think I'd put my bet on MMORPG, meaning a large number of people are players and a large number of people are non-playing characters that facilitate the existence of the game.
I actually don't think that
NPCs would explain a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any NPCs. I think that does a disservice to humanity and our relationship with a higher power.
Have you seen this recent?
I understand.
Animals are non-player characters.
I understand why you would think that there are non-player characters of human beings, but I think I don't think it just does those people a disservice. I think it does us a disservice in our understanding of humanity.
That moral argument doesn't change my perspective on people being NPCs.
I don't want to believe it.
Well, that's fine. I don't want to believe
they're not truly non-human.
I want to believe
they have
that everyone
personalities.
is,
Have you seen this recent research that about a third of human beings don't have an inner monologue?
Yeah, what's up with that? I don't know how to confirm or deny that.
I don't understand that either.
That's what I'm talking about. And have you ever seen the test of mental imagery?
No.
They show you. They say which one. When you're told to think of an apple, what do you see? And then they showed varying pictures of apples. Mm-hmm. Some people can't visualize anything, nor can they think words in their own mind.
My son was asking me the other day, he was like, Mom, do you think in sentences like you're talking to yourself? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, me too. I was like, okay.
I think you got to learn
an inner monologue.
Yeah.
Some people don't have one.
I think that's wacky. How do you go about life and figure out how to make decisions if you're not constantly in communication with yourself?
Well, so I was reading this story a long time ago, and I was hanging out with my friends, and I was reading, and I was like, whoa. I was like, they're saying that a third of people don't have an inner monologue. And then one of my friends said, what's an inner monologue? And I said, like, when you're thinking, sometimes you're thinking like you're speaking almost. Like in your mind, you have a train of thought that is various words. And then my friend was like, I don't know what that is. Wow. Now, here's the other thing, too. I've got multilingual friends who will explain their inner monologue switches back and forth.
Right.
Because they speak in different languages. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then there's some people telling me they don't have one. And I asked my friend, like, then what are you thinking? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm just like, what's in your mind? Like, do you see pictures? Because the craziest thing for me is when I do these videos where I'm like just talking in a stream of consciousness,
Right.
I'm actually on a multi-track mindset. Sometimes when I'm reading articles and talking, I'm imagining like I'm scheduling my day. I'm doing a bunch of things.
Wow.
Yeah. So to hear that some people don't even have a single track was like, how do you function? Is it like stimuli? Is it this?
Yeah.
This is why I think that not this solely. I don't think everyone who doesn't have an inner monologue is an NPC, but I think this is indicative of the fact that some people are NPCs. And we talked about on this show. There's this. I can't remember who brought it up. Maybe you know it, Ian. The theory that there's a finite number of souls, and that there's
Yes.
too many humans on the planet, so not every person is ensouled.
That's horrifying. That's a horrifying thought.
Yeah, I think it's
I know
more of a
you might
resolution.
not want to believe it, but there's no argument to believe or disbelieve.
I think it's like a resolution scaling system where, like, I used to picture an apple. It was red, round apple, but now I picture like a highly refined. I can see the light shimmering off it when I visualize it, only because I've developed my brain and my ability to, by letting go of my shame and stuff like that. So I think it's not that they don't have it; it's that they can't really see it because they don't understand what it is. But it's there, communicating. Their subconscious is constantly in communication.
Think about
If
this.
you believe in the subconscious, I'm a skeptic on the subconscious.
do you believe animals have souls?
No.
And so this
I'm
is
an Orthodox Christian.
exactly a typical Christian belief. Only humans have souls.
Right.
Now, play a video game like GTA.
Mm-hmm.
Do animals? Or no. Let's play Skyrim.
Okay.
Do the animals
Just
have?
playing that yesterday.
Do the animals in that game have souls?
No.
Well, nobody's playing them. There's
Yeah.
no
There's
one is in
no-
control. They just do this programmed based thing.
Right.
Now, for a single player game like Skyrim, no one but you has a soul because all
Right.
the other thing, Now in an MMO, you know that many of these people that are running around doing things, these other players,
people.
they have souls.
Yeah.
There's a player behind it. But there are also animals running around that have no soul. I look around at the planet and I look at animals and I don't see them as having souls. I like Bucko. I don't think he has a soul.
How do you define a soul?
A player character. I do not think animals are player
Do
characters.
you think they're conscious?
I think there's varying degrees of what we define as consciousness, but I do not believe that animals have souls.
Do you think they're sentient?
Perhaps elephants and maybe dolphins and some larger whales.
Someone was saying Jesus is alive, Jesus Christ is alive, and I was like, I think what you want to start saying is Jesus Christ is sentient because his body died, so he's dead, but his soul lives on in the form of sentience, this like field of magnet of whatever it is, if it's plasma or something greater than that, that's still there interacting with us.
Well, in Orthodoxy, we reject the ghost in the machine idea. So we don't believe that a soul and a body are separate things. So the way I have tried to describe this...
So would you say that you're like a physicalist?
Yes, in a way. The way I've tried to explain this to secular people is you could look upon a soul as a transmitter, right? And the software program that runs the hardware that does the transmission is the soul, right? But you could also look at the soul as a receiver. There's a transmission from God, and your body is capable of receiving this transmission and understanding it and even interpreting it in certain ways. And when you die, the signal doesn't go away. The signal doesn't stop.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think so. Like you've got your own magnetic field that's interpreting the greater field,
Yeah.
and then
That's why we believe in bodily resurrection. The body will be resurrection. Otherwise, your soul wouldn't be resurrected because we're embodied beings.
I think about simulation theory in terms of like video games, and you were mentioning there's no difference. Libby, you were mentioning there's no difference between a simulation and saying it's created. And we've talked about this before. I completely
Yeah.
agree. So
The world is created. Do you think the world's created?
created? Well, I don't know,
Okay.
I don't know. Agnostic for the most part. I'm not atheist though. I do believe in God. But created, I guess a simple answer is yes, and perhaps the process of whatever, whether you're believing in solid state theory or Big Bang theory, whatever you want to believe, all of that is the process of creation.
Yeah.
Well, it's just transmutation. Nothing can ever be created or destroyed.
That's what when I was teaching CCD at my church, I had a kid come in and his mom was making him go to, it's like, catechism. It's when you're,
yeah.
when you're preparing for confirmation, which
I'm
is
glad to hear that still goes on.
one of the
That's great.
sacraments. And so his mom was making him go and he was like, I'm an atheist. And I'm like, okay, kid, you're 13. Like, that's cool. Be an atheist. And he was like, I don't believe in an afterlife. And I was like, okay, so, what about, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed? And he was like, yeah, okay, I believe in science. And I was like, okay, so what happens to your energy when you die? And he was like, I don't know. It goes back into something. And I'm like, right. So it doesn't die, right? So your energy in some form, even in your scientific atheist understanding of the world, goes somewhere. It has to continue on without
It
it.
might be
what's your-
true that
let
energy
me-
can be created or destroyed. We think it can't be at this
We
stage.
think it can't be, sure.
So,
and he
you
thought
play-
it couldn't be.
you
So
play
I
any
got
video
him on
games?
it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What's your favorite video game?
I actually still like Skyrim, especially with the new updates. I was just playing it with some of the plugins.
Skyrim, great. What's the Whiterun?
Yeah, that's
One
one
of
of
the
the
cities?
main cities in the game.
Did anyone build those cities in the game? Like when you go into the game and walk up to the city, did any of those characters actually chop down the trees and construct those buildings?
No.
No, they didn't. It was created by
Yeah.
the creator of the game.
Even the house I live in Whiterun in the game.
And
right? Yeah.
but to the characters, they're in buildings that, according to the
Right.
lore, were created.
Yes.
So I think it's funny when talking about simulation theory, because the idea of a simulation versus a constructed or intelligently designed universe or a creator
Yes.
is they're all the same idea. And then you consider this. Dinosaurs and fossils, when people say they were always there, I don't believe that the Earth has been around that long. Many secular individuals or atheists will laugh and say that's absurd. We've done carbon dating, etc. And it's like, yes. And just like a video game, if we're in a simulation, they were drag and drop and placed there for purposes of the game for some reason.
Well, and you have Christians who say that that's what happened with archaeological finds, that
Right.
they were placed there to be part of
There's
our
a-
understanding.
Like in a
Excellent
video
book.
game, the
Yeah.
buildings are placed there and
Yeah.
no one built them.
There's an excellent book called Forbidden Archaeology. There's a shorter paperback version of it, but it's just an analysis of about 1,500 archaeological digs in which, when they do carbon dating, humans have been here way, way longer. They actually correct carbon dating to accord with evolutionary theory, even though the physical evidence contradicts it. And this happens a lot.
So, like, what I've heard is if something's been exposed to the air and you carbon date it, it's going to have a way later,
Right.
or I think a later date.
Right.
Like, it's gonna
Like we have
show
these
more
famous
recent.
footprints in Texas where we have dinosaur footprints. It's Dinosaur Footprint State Park, and human footprints are also there, dated to the same time.
Someone was just saying
but they
2
say
million?
it can't be. They say it can't be because of evolutionary theory. Yeah.
I think it was Randall Carlson might have said that 2 million years. He thinks
Yes.
humans have been around for 2 million years.
Yes.
Why does he
It
think
just
that?
keeps getting older and older.
aren't
He didn't give
but-
any evidence at the
but
time.
aren't they also not necessarily human beings? Like there are all these other humanoids.
Hominids, yeah.
Yeah, hominids. That's the word that like came before us, like Neanderthals and all
Well,
of these
it's-
different kinds of.
It's actually
bipedal
Florensis
you guys
type
are
of creatures.
you're overthinking it. It's actually much simpler. Life originated on Venus, but a runaway greenhouse effect destroyed the planet. So the last humans, as the planet was falling apart due to a greenhouse effect, which led to sulfuric acid rain, built the Ark project, which took the DNA from 2 of as many animals as possible. The military then launched it before the planet was destroyed, and they came to Earth, which they'd been terraforming for some hundreds of thousands of years, and then disseminated the genetics to create life.
That
I
would
used
be
to
a
have-
great
That was
I used
around
to-
the Precambrian area, which is why we see the Precambrian explosion. That's when the Ark project deposited all of the new animals because we needed to now start colonizing Earth.
Got it.
Unfortunately, Venus was destroyed, and now we can't go back and check because the density
The acid.
of the acid destroys our satellites and probes when they land.
When I was a kid, I used to think that all of the planets had been consecutively inhabited.
what you did there.
And it would be like consecutively inhabited. So Earth, it was Earth's turn. Mars had been inhabited, but it had lost its atmosphere, and so Mars was no longer inhabited.
Wouldn't that
and
be
now
a-
it's Earth,
It
and
would
then
be a
it'll be
great
like
movie.
one by one.
I was going to say a great movie because
sun.
the Great Flood is on Venus, not on Earth.
Right.
And I was reading about how Venus may have once had an Earth-like climate because it's relatively close enough to the sun. But they do say a runaway greenhouse effect caused acid buildup, which destroys everything. And so I'm like, it's a fun idea.
When the sun was smaller, it wasn't as hot on Venus. It just expanded and then essentially cooked the planets. Like Venus, they thought those were comet impact, all these craters on Venus. But now what they think is that the planet got so hot that it cooked and exploded out all this goo out of itself, basically baked and then exploded because of the sun. But the reason I think that life originated on Earth in this solar system is because of the moon. Because of this weird moon, like Theia smashed into Earth 4 billion years ago, came out, ball of magma that cools down into this moon that pulls on the tides and causes for all this unique gestation of life.
That's not what happened. What happened was when Earth was forming, God clicked and dragged and dropped the moon and then typed in the parameters for stable gravitation, and that's why the moon and the sun line up perfectly, creating an eclipse.
And then
'cause it
put a
was
whole
placed
bunch of
there.
water on the planet
Yeah.
for the moon to mess
Well,
with.
physicists recognize
for the
this.
moon to mess with.
I mean, I get in conflicts with physicists all the time because being math guy, we don't trust the existence of their abstract math entities, and they believe these things exist sometimes. So, but they have this idea of this, what do they call it? The strong anthropomorphic principle, that the universe does appear to have been designed for physicists to understand it.
I love it.
And they don't know what to call it. All these constants could have been all these different ways, depending on how the Big Bang went, but they all fell this way that human consciousness could figure it out. And they call it, there's a strong and a weak version of that principle.
Is it a joke?
No, it's serious.
Because I think people developed sensors to be able to read the universe. That's why we are sensors.
Or at the very least, we're only having these conversations because we developed the ability to understand the universe.
Yes.
I was
So,
recently,
otherwise, we'd be rabbits running around just
Of course,
going meh, meh at each other.
well, that would be the Garden of Eden, right? I mean, when people
Yeah.
talk
Yeah,
about how
yeah.
the fall from grace and the Garden of Eden, I'm always like, I'm super grateful for that. Otherwise, we would actually not be the conscious beings that we are. It's like a discussion of how human beings became conscious. I was recently listening to a podcast about the theory of evolution and how when Darwin came out with his theory, what happened was it was broadly accepted relatively quickly, and all other theories about the origins of mankind were just tossed out as fake.
Interesting. I wonder if he knew somebody.
Yeah, I wonder about that as well. Like, how did this theory, how did it explode and become the only theory that we consider?
You know what the worst religion would be?
What's that?
That we're in a video game and when you die, you wake up at a Dave and Buster's, like Blitz and shits.
And
from
you're like,
Rick and Morty.
out of chips on your card.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, like Rick and Morty, the Roy game.
Right.
It's like you just wake up and everyone's like, that was a pretty good run. What did you do? You were a editor in chief for a independent media outlet.
I always thought Conan's religion was interesting. He worshipped Crom, the god of strength, and if you were ever weak enough to have to call in his aid, he would kill you anyway.
I like in Klingon religion, and the Klingon warriors killed all of the gods hundreds of years ago.
Right.
What is
good
your
one.
trade? Like you're saying you're a math guy?
Yeah.
What is your main studies and
I was
focuses?
trained as a topologist, but you can't feed a family on that, so I do statistics like most people, which leads me into AI. But I'm more interested in topology.
Meaning like the study of the Earth's surface?
No, oh man, what's a way to explain this? So there's a set theoretic definition of this, but that will not be helpful. Okay, so imagine that you have a geometry. Could be Euclidean geometry, whatever. You have a geometry, and you take out the ability to measure distance. All right? So now you could think of everything as infinitely stretchy. There's no concept of distance.
I got it.
Right?
Relationships.
Well, in that kind of a scheme, a circle and a square and a triangle are all the same shape, right? Because you can stretch them into the same shape. So instead of using a congruence relation like you would in, basically you could define branches of mathematics by their identity relations, right? So a congruence relation in a geometry says if you overlay the two objects, they have the same exact outline, right? Right? In algebra, equality is the identity relation. It has to be the exact same number. A homeomorphism is the identity relation in topology, and it's basically can they be stretched into the same shape?
Wow.
Real
is that
quick,
used in
a lot
material
of
science?
a lot of people have been mentioning throughout the show that the balloon exploded over Montana.
Wow.
Really?
And we didn't bring it up because, as much as I'm checking, all we have is a video, and it is confirmed. Well, it's not confirmed, but is reportedly BS.
Yeah, because I thought it was actually moving east. I thought it was over Missouri at this point.
So there's a video going viral showing something coming down, and everyone's saying explosion, explosion. This is it. And Ryan Saavedra says video's likely totally BS. Billings says we're not aware of any explosions, and defense officials tell Fox News the balloon over Montana has not been exploded, was not shot down by videos, and videos are fake.
Yep.
And it's still over Montana.
Well, it's moving.
No, it's moving east.
And apparently
for some
there's
reason
more.
And for some reason, the
Wow.
Pentagon is just letting it move east. I mean, it's so humiliating. Like, I feel humiliated by our government that they're just letting this happen. Like, blow the thing up. Just blow it up.
I want them to capture
Just take it down.
I was thinking what happens is the Chinese were running a border scan across the southern Canadian
Well,
border. and got
Canada was
blown up
talking
course.
about
Are we
too.
sure it's Chinese? I mean,
no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It is.
It's
China
Chinese.
said it was theirs.
It's
Yeah.
theirs?
They just said
Okay.
it was a civilian mistake.
They said, "Don't worry about it, you guys. It's totally fine that we're doing this."
I like.
and then the
How
Pentagon
can we let
says
it stay
too.
up there? That makes no sense.
It is
It's
very weird.
humiliating.
Like they got to at least bring it down and study it.
I'm
makes no
so
sense.
I have so little faith in this government. I'm just like I'm chilling.
One
Is that
point,
a psyop though? Could it be ours and they're just
It's
saying
not
that?
I don't know.
ours.
China released an official statement saying it's a Chinese civilian aircraft that veered off course.
But that
We-
could be a joint declaration by the U.S. government and the Chinese
I wouldn't
government.
put it
you know, the
past them.
DoD has $1.9 trillion budget, and we can't take down a balloon.
We can. That's the thing.
Well, we won't.
A drone could
understand.
probably do it. I don't know if a drone can go
$1.9
$30,000
trillion.
feet away.
I think there was
For real?
confusions because it said it's over MO, the state MO, which is Missouri.
Missouri.
But
Yeah.
that's in the other side of the world
No,
compared to
that's
Montana.
because it's going
moved.
east. It's moving east. It's a balloon. It travels.
Yeah, but
thought it was in
Missouri's,
It's not like a
Missouri's got
static.
South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa between
Yes,
Montana.
it moved. It's
I
called
thought
the
it-
jet stream
to Missouri. It's in
Yes.
Missouri now.
Yeah.
I thought it was in high atmospheric orbit. I thought it was like 80,000 feet.
Yeah, something super high, and,
Okay,
and I guess
okay.
they said that it was moving towards the center of the country. That's what the Pentagon
They said it was moving east.
Yeah, it's the jet stream. That's what happens.
Where it goes.
I hate to, this makes me remember Japan in World War II.
those bombs.
They built balloon bombs.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be a way to deliver a large, huge explosive.
I watched
Or
some
anything else,
documentary.
or like the
I
things
was
that
watching a
wipe
documentary
out
show
all of our
where
electronics.
some little kids in like the 80s found an unexploded bomb and they like hit it with a rock and it blew up. And what had happened is they explain how Japan would make these balloons that had a mechanism for when they got hot and got too high, then it would like release pressure. But then if it got too low, a bag would fall off and then it would go back up and it would make it across the jet stream and start dropping bombs on the United States.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It makes me remember that.
They found kids after World War II in England found unexploded ordnance. It was always an issue.
I'm so concerned about this balloon, but
Fugo balloon bomb.
not the balloon itself. It's the behavior
Wow,
and the
look at that
response
thing.
to having a Chinese spy balloon.
Yes, that's the concern.
country.
That's the concern. Why are we not doing anything? Why is the government just like, hey, it's
That's what
totally
doesn't
cool.
make sense.
It's totally cool that we have this spy balloon. And you know what else the Pentagon said? The Pentagon said, China already has spy satellites, so there's nothing that they can see now that they haven't been able to see with the spy satellites.
Yo, they built 9,300 of these.
These balloon
and
things?
of the ones that made it to the U.S., only 6 people were killed by them. They were extremely ineffective.
Wow.
Yeah, they just didn't work.
Wow. They probably had
No,
no
they tried.
guidance mechanism, right? It's just random.
Just the jet stream. So it bombed Oregon, I guess.
But this Chinese balloon probably has some way to guide.
Well, this Chinese balloon also is giving China a whole lot of information about how stupid we are and we don't respond to anything. It's like, here's a major threat. We're not going to respond to it at all.
A lot of people are saying because they have low Earth satellites, this isn't that big of a deal. But
Right.
like, how do you know that? You need to
Also-
break that thing apart and look at the nanostructure of the materials used to build it. It could be sensors. It could be all these sensors
Plus,
feeding
even
like infrared data.
symbolically, like get it out
Yeah,
the
it
sky.
makes me want to get a gun and
Yes.
protect myself in case the Chinese
Yes.
send another balloon over my house.
Yes. We should all have like RPGs take this
It's not going to make
thing
it.
down.
There's like this whole
You need to set up
pattern.
another balloon
Another balloon to take it down.
to be able to get that high up, 80,000 feet or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
high atmospheric.
But
That's
we
way
have
up there.
Yeah.
people who do that. Like we have those guys who go all the way up to the top of the, way above the atmosphere, and they jump off platforms. And they're
Well,
like,
that
"Oh,
was
I'm a
like
thrill
one
seeker."
guy.
All right, we have
Yeah, that
one
Red Bull
guy,
guy.
And
who
it's
does
really
that.
dangerous because you
Obviously,
start
it's
spinning.
dangerous. Yeah, it looks
Yeah, if
pretty
you start spinning, you
dangerous.
can't stop.
Right.
And
There's
then
no wind.
Then
and
you're
then-
done.
What were you saying about the structure of it? You saying something bothers you about the structure of this?
Well, look, I mean, there's a pattern here. Like, we don't protect our southern border, right? We know we could interdict all these drugs. We don't, right? We can drone people all over the Middle East, but we can't drone drug dealers in Mexico. We're not protecting our airspace from just blatant intrusion by Chinese spy balloons.
We have an incredibly
There's-
old, doddery man as
there's like
president
a
who
whole-
doesn't seem to care at all.
Yeah, there's just like a whole program here. I actually don't believe that the president's in control of the military. Ever since Trump is what proved that to me, right?
Well, because why?
I really
You
don't even
think
look at
that-
the
Well, because Trump tried to pull our troops out of Syria and they
Bingo.
And
lied.
the military
And they
wouldn't
lied,
do it. Yeah.
Shell
even on
games.
small things they refused. He ordered military parades every year of his presidency, and they refused to do it.
I would have loved to see a military parade. That
Yeah.
would have been
I know.
badass.
I know.
cool.
Milley actually gave him the middle finger and put a tank out there and just let it sit there.
Wow.
I mean, they literally gave him the middle finger.
I was heard that Biden wanted to shoot it down. Gave the order. I don't know if he gave the order,
No,
but he wanted to.
Pentagon said not.
Pentagon
to
said
do it.
not a good idea.
Biden was asked about it when he was talking about some garbage, stupid thing that he's got planned right now. And instead, he just looked at the reporters and walked out the room. Didn't say
It's
a
so
thing.
strange how we give China, in some ways, we're so militant towards China by rhetoric,
Well, we can't decide if they're competitors
But we never
or
do anything.
enemies or allies.
just never do anything. It's odd.
Meanwhile, they have China said that their military needs to be ready by, 2027 to invade Taiwan? And Biden has said that we will militarily defend Taiwan. So now we're literally looking at, in our lifetimes, a two-front war against China and Russia. This is a disastrous situation. I mean, if Obama was talking about the managed decline of the United States, this is the managed destruction of
That's
the
what
United States. It's not even a decline. It's
And
just
we
like,
literally-
hey, let's just destroy ourselves.
I called it this with, I did a video
Right.
leading with Jack Posobiec's story about how his neighborhood fell apart. It's a slow motion controlled demolition. We've said it tons
Yeah, I
of
love
times.
that. I love that. Yeah.
Well, I get the vibe that the
That's what
Chinese
your
are
impression
terrified we're going to invade them. And so they're like, if they invade us, we need to know what their northern
we-
border is secured like, because
We're not
we
an
will
inva-
have to send troops through Canada.
We can't
We're
do
not an
anything.
invasive force. We don't have the ground troops for an invasion.
And we also don't have the base.
Right. The United States is an air superiority military. That's how we win. So we've got missiles.
That's exactly right.
What they're concerned about is Taiwan. I think they're getting ready to invade Taiwan.
That's why we just we're putting a bunch of stuff in the Philippines now.
And I think these balloons most likely they need as much data as possible. And so, there's a lot of questions like, why aren't they using satellites? Satellites have to keep moving for the most part. I mean, there's geostationary orbit.
Yeah, this is
but
going very slowly.
They have to crisscross to be able to track different areas. This balloon can move around. And I think most likely, like I said yesterday and on my show earlier, the guy robbing a liquor store doesn't care that he has a gun illegally because he's already planning on committing a greater crime in
Right.
robbing a liquor store.
Right.
China doesn't care if we're mad about a balloon. They're already planning something that's going to piss us off. So screw
Right.
it.
Well, there's all kinds of ways of doing reconnaissance. Like their satellites could be looking at all of our electronic emissions, trying to detect the balloon, and learning all about
Yep,
our
that's
electronic
right.
detection systems. This is the kind of stuff that goes on, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, the Russians are actually masters of that.
You want to be almost like, oops, we accidentally pulled the balloon down somehow.
Right.
Just shoot it down.
just shoot the.
Well,
Just
then,
shoot it down.
Then you got no
Maybe
evidence.
they can't.
So I have
Why
this
could
theory.
they not? They
Because it's
sent up.
80,000 feet and it's not something where it's just like dispatch X to go do it.
You need
If
an
it's-
ASAT missile. Yeah.
Right.
You need an anti-satellite missile to get it.
Yep. It's too high for a jet. So what do? Another balloon.
Yep.
Another balloon carrying a bunch of blades or something?
Listen, if we have a $1.9 trillion defense budget and we can't take down a balloon over our
No,
airspace,
you misunderstand.
that is so stupid.
It's that we can't deploy anything right
no,
now.
I understand that.
So we have to build it, which you can't just do instantly.
Well, that's dumb.
And
We
we've
should have
outsourced
everything
all of our
already.
production to China.
Yeah.
We call China, can you build an anti-balloon?
Which
So
is
now we
also so
cannot-
stupid. I mean, Trump at least was like trying to get drug manufacturing back in the U.S. He was trying to convert, the Kodak factory up in Rochester
Yeah.
to turn it into for basically
Lasers.
for ibuprofen or whatever.
Lasers could take it down, people are pointing out. But you still have to get within a certain range for the laser to be
do.
effective. I mean, 80,000 feet
You mean
is still...
some space
It's a long
lasers?
ways.
That's a long way for a laser. So, but maybe they could get halfway up with some kind of high altitude drone, and they do have those. And
Supposedly,
then-
we have ASAT missiles that can shoot satellites.
I don't know if there's a laser that can.
But do they work?
Hit
Maybe we gave
40,000
them all to
feet.
Ukraine.
I'm actually skeptical that a lot of our technology works.
I agree.
Our 777 artillery, very simple machine, is just absolutely inferior to Russian artillery. The Ukraine conflict has proved that, right?
That and
I think a lot of the stuff is made to enrich the defense companies,
Yeah.
not
Well, that's
to
why we
actually
had to
kill
have a
the
war
enemy.
with you. That's why
But
we had
also,
to help
I-
Ukraine's war, was to line the pockets of the people who
100%.
ICBMs are in disrepair.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And yet Russians have hypersonic missiles that we know they've launched in Ukraine and work. And they're 100% stealthy and undetectable by radar because of the plasma that develops in front of them.
Oh, awesome.
So they're stealthy and hypersonic.
and our cities are just really vulnerable. to
And
balloons.
they're shooting 64,000, I think was what Colonel McGregor was saying, 64,000 artillery rounds a day.
wow.
And they're going to blow up all our tanks.
And Ukraine can barely muster 5,000, and they've wiped out the artillery round stores for all the NATO countries. Like we're not industrially prepared for war anymore.
No,
Yeah.
we're not. It's ridiculous that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russia knows
We've
it.
done a very poor job. So does China.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for innovation. You know, there's an old saying in manufacturing that innovation happens on the shop floor. So when you outsource manufacturing, the
do all
innovation
of the
goes over
innovation.
there because it's from solving real world problems that you learn how to innovate. The Russians have never outsourced, and the sanctions, paradoxically, forced them to develop their own internal industries, which I think bolstered internal innovation.
Well, and China outsources, but only for the purpose of gathering resources.
100%.
I was thinking about France in World War II because they were like the superpower on earth next to Germany and Japan. But,
Right.
And then they were just taken off the table in the early days of the war. Like if China were to invade the United States in like 3 weeks with tactical nuclear strikes on the coastal cities and invasion of the capital. Thing is, we can work decentrally now, so it's a lot harder to nullify a country by taking the capital. But like we think like if there was a world war, it would be between the United States and like the United States could be removed from the game in the first days if we're stupid.
I mean, land warfare. I don't actually think the NATO alliance could possibly beat Russia
We don't have enough
at land
guys.
warfare. Yeah,
In naval warfare.
in land warfare.
land.
We just don't have enough stuff.
But I
or
don't
enough
think
guys.
the Ukraine thing is attacking Russia. That's what I differ from a lot of my friends on the right. They think that we're trying to attack. I think we're trying to destroy Germany.
Oh.
That's
don't
what I
think
think.
Like they're
very
trying
smart.
to bankrupt and destroy Germany like they were doing to us through the
Deindustrialize
Federal
Germany.
Reserve?
To deindustrialize Germany, which
But
was
we
the
paid
program in
for all
World
of
War
that.
One and World War Two.
Yeah,
as
but then
well.
we paid to rebuild them.
Yeah, we did.
So
Yeah.
why would we want to corrupt our investment at this point?
For the same reason World War One started, we will not allow an alliance between Germany and Russia.
You mean it
It's-
wasn't Archduke Ferdinand?
Yeah, the British. You mean killed by the Black Hand Society, financed by the British Foreign Service? Sure. Yeah. But the Mackinder thesis, you can look that up. But it's a long-running sort of foreign policy idea, a British foreign policy idea, that there are land peoples and sea peoples, and Anglosphere foreign policy has been completely directed toward prevention of an alliance between Europe and Russia. So there's always got to be, and so the Nord Stream pipelines directly threatened that. It was creating an alliance between Germany and Russia.
Wow.
And Russia was actively attempting to come into the Western economy. They were moving away from China into the Western economy, and Anglo foreign policy cannot allow that, and has historically, literally since the 1600s, been completely directed at preventing that. That's what World War I was actually about. And so we're literally deindustrializing Germany with high energy costs right now.
Yeah, and we killed that whole pipeline. We're also destroying England with high energy costs.
Yes, we are.
More people freeze every year because of extreme temperatures than die of any kind of heat exposure.
Yep.
All right, let's go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com to support our work. And you get access to a massive library of uncensored, members-only shows and support our cultural endeavors.
Nice.
But let's read what you guys have to say. We got JTTV. Ska says, release the code, meaning your entire network of influencers. Ian has the most honest roles. Oh, very nice.
Hey.
So we have a lot of comments early on where people were saying it looked like the balloon was shot down, but it's
I see.
Yeah, not seems to be not the case. All right, let's see. Okay, Alex says this man's story is extremely important and needs to get out. Meanwhile, the chat is spammed with Eliza Blue nonsense. Respect the quartering, but y'all need a life. Well, it is what it is. We're here to talk about Jeff's story. Matthew Witt says, I've been trying to tell people about Jeff Younger, but all the liberals tell me I'm lying, or the mother has the right to do that. I'm sorry for the situation. I would be mortified.
Yeah, what is the next on the horizon now for you legally?
They're going to push me into an early trial as soon as they can. The judge will probably clear the docket and let it get done because they want to get this trial done before Texas passes a law requiring parental consent. And then what will happen after that, it will happen probably, I'm guessing, right at the 6-month mark is how the judge will do it. And then it's possible for the California courts to take over jurisdiction since she will have lived there for 6 months. And then my kids fall under California laws.
But if Texas passes the law that gives both parents...
I'm going to try again to get an order to have them return to Texas and give me emergency jurisdiction over them.
All right, here's one. This is actually seemingly insulting, but also actually kind of respectful. Zach Harrington says, Ian's willingness to say things that would embarrass a normal person is absolutely inspiring. But actually, I think that's a compliment.
It is.
So key.
Because
I agree.
there are a lot of people that should say something but are worried about what other people think and won't say it. And Ian will say what he thinks.
He will.
It's freeing too. Like they laugh at first, and it's like, oh, I hurt. But then eventually you realize like they don't laugh as much anymore.
All right. Stephen says, ask Jeff if he ever considered getting a bishop or priest to do an exorcism on his wife.
Well, we converted into Orthodoxy, and prior to conversion, we went through an exorcism, and then at baptism, another exorcism. And then when my sons were born, we have what's called a churching period. So the children and the mother are not allowed in church for 40 days, and then they come and are exorcised and brought into the body after 40 days. So that's 3 of them.
What was the exorcism like?
The prayers of exorcism, one require that you spit on the devil's name. You literally spit to the west. And that's to determine if you're under his influence. And they ask for the Holy Spirit to remove any infernal influence. And it's prayed. The exorcism prayers are prayed by the entire church.
Do people
not
cry?
Just the priest. Sometimes, yeah.
It's like you're literally exorcising the soul.
Yeah, yeah. But Orthodoxy is somewhat different than Roman Catholicism in that we do not generally approve of moving the passions in church. So, yeah.
Blue Collar Henry says, this is the exact reason MGTOW exists. No marriage until law changes.
Well, yeah, if you go to my Twitter feed, you'll see that I was swarmed by feminists when I suggested that men may have to start using surrogacy and adoption if they want to have children. And a lot of conservatives and religious people are really mad at me right now over that.
Surrogacy
And
is
feminists?
an abomination, and surrogacy should be entirely illegal. Commercial surrogacy.
What about someone else hosts the
selling
baby?
eggs?
Yes.
It's not someone else. No, it's when you rent a woman's body,
Yeah, you
jack
rent a
her
womb.
full of drugs, and then take her baby once it's born.
Oof.
Yes.
Brutal.
I call it pre-adoption, so I don't think it's as bad.
It's extremely. Well, you've never been pregnant. I mean, I could not imagine. It's absolutely a horror.
But it's someone
show.
else's egg. The woman is hosting someone else's egg.
Yes.
Usually.
Which also, in order to host someone else's egg, you have to take drugs to prevent or organ rejection, the same kind of drugs that you would to do that. You have to go through IVF drugs. I mean, it's an insane process. And it's very much like prostitution, except you're getting screwed for 9 months.
But unfortunately, it's the only way for fathers to be secure in their posterity under the law.
There's absolutely no reason.
I think we should change the laws.
There's absolutely no reason that women should be subjected to men's whims and have their bodies forced into that for money. There's absolutely.
Well, it's consensual if they're
It is
they're getting
consensual.
money. Ideally, I mean, I agree.
Sure.
No one should be forced into.
Sure,
it.
it's consensual to buy women. Yeah, you can buy women with money. You can definitely do that. You can definitely do it. But that doesn't make it right. And it certainly doesn't make it something that should be legally sanctioned.
Renting, Libby.
Yes. I'm so opposed to surrogacy.
Leasing.
You have no idea.
It's a lease.
But
Lease
are
online.
you as opposed to the single motherhood?
I'm as opposed to single motherhood by choice, where you would get
Okay.
a sperm donor
Okay.
and do that. I'm 100% opposed to that.
What
as well.
about getting pregnant naturally, but not getting married or rejecting the father? Those kinds of things.
I don't think that's great. I don't think that's a great situation. But if you get pregnant and you keep your child, and you do right by your child, I'm in favor of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Patriot says, I sympathize with Jeff. I went through the same thing with 2 daughters and a drug-abusing ex-wife who'd have gang members, dealers, and drugs caught on tape leaving them for hours and drug deals with them present, berated by judges for suing for full custody.
Yeah. In general, because of the money interest, I told you about Title 4D, the family courts generally give the child to the dysfunctional parent because the responsible parent will pay.
And make money.
The drug dealer will never pay the child support and they'll never get the money. So they tend to give the child to the dysfunctional parent and the functional parent will pay.
Is that only if the dysfunctional one happens to be a woman? Is it
I
something
had-
with the mother?
No.
What?
There's tons of mothers this has happened to in Texas, believe me.
I had custody of myself awarded to my father. So I was raised by my father. And then I had custody awarded to his ex-wife, who was not my mother.
You did that by choice?
No,
No,
it
no,
all
the
got
courts.
very screwed up. The whole
courts.
thing was very crazy. But I mean, I've been through so many divorce processes at this point.
Yeah. In Texas, the stats are that in a divorce, this isn't general, this is of divorced couples, 94.3% of the time the father will get every other weekend. It's largely a father problem, but increasingly it is affecting mothers. As mothers As men become less responsible, mothers become the more responsible party, so the courts say she'll be the one to pay child support.
What the heck? That makes no sense that you would give the kid to the less responsible parent.
It doesn't for the child's benefit, but it does for the state budgets.
And at that point, don't the people have a duty to step up and tell the state you've gone wrong?
Every time I stand up and talk about the problem of single motherhood and the way that the child support industry promotes it, Republican women go absolutely insane on me. They go insane on me. It is not a popular topic even among Republicans.
What is it specifically that they go insane about?
They say you're anti-woman somehow because you're for traditional marriage. Like, I want to get rid of no-fault divorce. I think you should be able to get divorced if one of the 5 faults are present. But no-fault divorce needs to go away.
If you want to date someone, date someone. If you want to get married, marriage is something different.
And the arrangement outside of marriage should be 50-50 custody, no child support, unless one of the parents is unfit. Which does happen.
What are the 5 faults?
Abandonment, denial of affection, which is basically you don't have sex, right? Fraud.
What would fraud be like? You have another family?
Yeah, bigamy would be one. Bigamy would be a form of fraud. It's widely...
hiding money and resources and stuff?
Well, or it could go the other way. It could be that you say that you have more money than you did or whatever. You tempted someone to marry you under a lie.
I see.
Abuse and then neglect. Abandonment.
Oh, abandonment is different than neglect?
You said that already.
Yeah, abandonment was the first one.
Yeah.
Abandonment. Yeah, go through those again.
Okay, so maybe let's see if I got this right. So we got, let's go with infidelity.
There you go.
Infidelity, yeah. Infidelity, fraud, abuse, abandonment, and denial of affection.
Denial of affection, I love it.
No, you have a right to sex in marriage. And that's prior to no-fault divorce, you had a right to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got. Mick Chilla says a man has to be absolutely insane these days to get married in the U.S.
I agree.
Many would caution against even cohabitation due to common law marriage.
I agree.
Wise up, men. MGTOW. Free Top G. Repeal the 19th.
You know what it is? It's like reverse
common law is not
Lysistrata.
real, though. Like, people misunderstand common law. It's not a real thing.
What is it?
It's this urban legend that if you live with a woman for a long enough period of time, you are now legally married, but that's just not real.
That's not true. Texas does have a common law statute, but it requires that you represent yourself as married 3 times in public, and then you're married. Yeah.
And it's because you are
What
choosing.
does it look like to represent yourself as
the
married?
idea is
You say you're married.
Oh, you say it.
The idea is you're inadvertently married and you go, oh no, now I'm married because we lived together. We were roommates. Oh, geez. That's not how it works.
That doesn't work. Yeah.
You have to assert your marriage. You have to file claims against your marriage. And then after a certain amount of time, you can legally seek benefits. But if you don't, then you won't.
Yeah. But living with a woman could still be very dangerous because you have no rights if you're not married and you have a child. Your rights are even worse if you're not married. So.
All right. Lakuva says deadlifts are great for grip strength. Ian, look into the Starting Strength program. It's great for beginners. Also, when Luke comes back, you should try to get the program's founder, Mark Ripito, on.
Yeah, Mark's a cool guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Alex Schott says, just think, not too long ago, the biggest peer pressure kids had to worry about was, hey, kids, do you want to go smoke and get drunk? Now it's, hey, kids, you want to take hormone blockers and cut off your junk?
Yep. And the schools are pushing it. That's the difference. The schools were against drugs, but the schools are all pushing this.
And it's scary for a lot of these kids. You know, you look at these detransitioners, these kids are going to grow up and it's going to be really horrifying.
Yes, it is. It's already horrifying if you've met any of them.
Have you been in touch with Chloe Cole?
No, I have online. But I have good friends of mine in Texas who are detransitioners.
They already are detransitioners?
Yes, yeah. In fact, have you guys seen the video of me at UNT when Antifa attacked me?
With Kelly Neidert, right? Yeah. I talked to Kelly about that. She was terrified. She was like locked in a closet for a while.
Yes.
Wow.
I got a rib broken.
Whoa.
The guy tried to choke me out.
They wouldn't let you speak at all. Did you end up speaking at all?
Yeah,
or?
they eventually because I'm not like these limp-wristed normie conservatives. So Antifa shows up, right? And I'm like, okay, I got an hour and a half. I'm going to make you yell for an hour and a half. Go for it. And I had a microphone, so I could always yell louder than them.
Yeah.
So I was like, is this all you commies got? The red guards are better than you guys. So they got all pissed, and then they were worn out after about half an hour. You just could only bang tables and yell for so long. And then one of the shot callers from Antifa, there's always a shot caller, right? Mm-hmm. The shot caller comes over, and he stupidly posted this on YouTube. The shot caller posted all of his radio and chat comments to all the other guys. It's funny. He comes over and says, you know what this guy's doing? He's making us look stupid by making us chant like this. We probably should let him talk. So then I started my talk, and then they surrounded the building with about 400 people.
Whoa.
300 or 400. And then they threatened to burn the building down, and then the police evacuated.
Nazis.
Yeah, that's what they did.
Neocons.
Yeah.
I call them neocons.
Some guy got a good shot of me. The cop put my head down, and then somebody, I don't know if it was a knee or something, but a guy broke my rib on my right side. Guy tried to choke me. I had to gable grip out of it.
Were you like they were taking you through a crowd or something?
Yeah,
you
to
out
get
there?
to a police car.
And this was all because you're trying to protect your children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
Actually,
because you were screaming at the crowd.
I was running for political office in Texas. I was running to be a member of the Texas House, and Kelly Neidhart's organization, the Young Conservatives of Texas,
It's like
invited me to come speak about my campaign, and that because of the anti-trans stuff. So I'm like on the top 10 list for Antifa in Texas. Like when I go to the Capitol, they have armed people follow me around.
You know, and people are all like, you should move to Texas. You should move to Florida. I'm like, dude, West Virginia is MAGA country.
Yes.
So I have to say this because we've got people who issue threats and stuff. If they came out to the mountains of West Virginia, my warning to them is like, please don't, because we don't want you to get hurt.
Right.
Like, I'm just saying, you're going to come to some mountain and there's going to be some right-wing nut job with, you know, an AR on each shoulder and pistols on each, you know, all over his body. And he's going to be yelling yeehaw as he sees them rolling up. Like, don't do it. Don't come out here, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Antifa's all over the urban areas of Texas.
yeah, you come out here and nope.
Well, here's
The posts on social media scare me.
The
honestly.
fact that Antifa...
Which posts?
The posts where they're like, I hope they come here. It would
Yes,
be awesome.
I've seen
Make
those.
my day. And I'm
I've
like,
seen
no,
those.
guys, you don't want to hurt. Like, we don't want anybody getting hurt. We don't want Antifa
Yeah.
showing up because then they're going to be leaving in body bags. And that's bad, bad, bad. Do not come out here. Ain't nobody out here is going to tolerate that. And we've seen these videos from a few years ago where like Antifa showed up to a residential neighborhood. And it was in a suburban area, and then people came out of their houses, and it was like union guys.
Yes.
And they just started shoving them and pushing them. Then you see videos where
That
people
was in West Virginia?
No. It was just some suburb. I can't remember
okay.
where it was. But they're pushing them. The Antifa is like, stop, man, leave us alone. Yeah, they can get away with this in cities where the police run cover for them.
That's what I was going to say.
But you come out into the countryside where you walk onto someone's property with a weapon and self-defense and castle doctrine kick in real quick. Please do not come out here.
Well, they didn't in
with
Missouri
malintent.
with that couple that stood outside.
That was St. Louis.
Yeah.
That's St. Louis.
Oh, I guess
the
that's
police
right.
protect Antifa.
They do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Antifa only operate in permissive environments. And so that tells you a lot about the political structures where you live. So I live in Denton County, Texas, in a town called Flower Mound. And it's very instructive that they will not operate in Flower Mound, but they will operate in Denton, the city, which is in Denton County, because the sheriff is permissive.
Yep.
And the police chief in Denton is permissive. That's all you need to know about your elected officials in law enforcement, is if Antifa operates there, they're allowing it.
Yep. Hands down,
100%.
because it's no surprise they don't operate out here.
Yeah.
Because the cops out here, they're not actually like far right or anything. We've worked with them because of the threats that we've gotten, and they're just kind of regular dudes.
Yeah.
But they don't tolerate it. But more importantly, the attitude out here is kind of like, well, you know, it's West Virginia. It's constitutional carry. Yeah. And if someone shows up and there's a threat to someone's life, they have a right to defend themselves and their property. That's why I'm like, I'm actually worried for these people if they came out to the mountain, because you look at these message boards for the neighborhood, and it's just people salivating, being like, make my day.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, oh, man.
If he'd only stepped over the line,
Yep.
I could have got him. Yeah. Exactly.
Don't come out here, man. But that's why it's like, you know, Texas, I don't want to go to a dense urban environment where I have to rely on cops. I'd rather be in my constitutional carry state. We have security guards, we have armed stuff, but we have laws that allow us to defend ourselves.
I love that.
And you have neighbors who don't take kindly to people from driving all the way out here, far left, wing nuts.
Sure.
Yeah, nut jobs.
I love it.
All right. Agamemnon's Gym Bag says, we're literally living in the plot of 99 red balloons, but all I care about is your son's welfare. Jeff, I'm not a praying man, but you have my prayers tonight. Lukenbach is no longer a destination to move to.
Yeah. Yeah. Texas is a very conservative population that is ruled by extremely left-wing Republicans.
Was it always like that in the last decade?
Pretty much. People forget until the mid '90s, Democrats ran Texas. It was a Democrat state
Yeah.
till the mid '90s.
California was Republican till what, the late 80s?
Yeah. All they did in Texas is they switched from being Democrats to being Republicans, and they run as a Republican, but they're still liberal.
Yeah. Did anyone else have 99 red left balloons running through your head all
Nina,
day?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
99. Yeah.
Sean says ATF has begun a 120-day amnesty period to register your braced pistols and waived the $200 tax. If caught with a braced pistol after 120 days, you'll be fined $250,000 and sentenced 10 years in prison. I'm pretty sure the ATF does not have legislative powers, so this is completely unconstitutional and will likely be overturned very quickly after the volley of lawsuits fired off by every single gun rights organization. So, we'll see. I have a feeling this is going to get shot down in the court, an emergency injunction within a matter of a week, but we'll see. To stress, the ATF can't decree legislation that you will go to prison for a thing that was not made illegal by Congress. So, good luck.
Right.
But, take it seriously, because I'm not saying the government ain't corrupt. They certainly are. They'll certainly try. All right, what do we got here? We'll grab some more. Dusty Firebird says, Libby is a rock star. Thank you for fighting for kids, Mr. Younger. This episode is why I watch
Always.
every night. I film birds in exotic locations. Follow me if you love nature, too.
Very cool.
What's the name?
Dusty Firebird.
Dusty Firebird.
Yeah. All right, where are we at? A lot of people mentioning the massive explosion in Billings, Montana. But what I could see is probably nothing, All right. Guardsman Norheim of the 10th First says Tim's voice didn't work in the deepfake because he's not an NPC already programmed in the machine. I don't know, but I will say this. I have been told by comedians it's hard to impersonate me.
Interesting.
Seamus tried. I think Seamus was trying to do something from Freedom Tunes, and he was like, I couldn't figure out how to get Tim Pool. I don't know. Someone asked him on the show, I think, can you do a Tim Pool voice? And he was like, I don't know. I can't figure it out. And I've heard that before.
Interesting.
I don't know. That's just me.
Wow.
Joe Rogan is also really hard to impersonate. People look, Trump is moderately difficult, but people nail Trump.
Yes.
Tom Cruise, pretty easy to get.
Right.
Ian McKellen is easy.
Yeah.
You can nail these impersonations. Dr. Fauci, I think, is pretty easy. But
Dr. Fauci has the same accent as my grandmother did.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's fairly easy. But Joe Rogan has
It's
a
like
weird
Bensonhurst,
voice.
Brooklyn.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's if you ever notice this, a lot of parodies with Joe Rogan will just get nowhere near sounding like him. It's weird,
He's always
Interesting.
posting on Instagram pictures of tattoos people get of his face.
That's kind of weird.
Just
And
so
I'm always
weird.
like, what
Very
is the
weird.
deal with
It's
this?
the weirdest thing.
He didn't post at first. I think he was weirded out, and then he was like, "You know what? I'm just accepting my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is who
That's-
I.
yeah.
This is real life."
And some of them are wild. Some of them have like a third
so
eye.
good. Just
It's
some of the best art.
amazing.
All right. The pool sheriff says you'll have to buy an official character in the metaverse so people know it's you and your truth will not some fake, kind of like a blue check mark. Well, I think what it'll be like is there will be the default avatars the poor people will have, where there's 7 models and they all look the same, but with different colors. And then there'll be the premium models that cost, $15 a month or whatever. And then everyone will subscribe
Or you'll be able to rent your premium clothing in the game just by spending time in the game.
in the game, there will be
40
no
hours
Like
a week.
skins.
Yeah,
And-
you
and
get
they're gonna
free
say-
skins if you spend 40 hours a week.
If you live and work in the metaverse, there's no crime, there's no theft. No one can mug you. You have no fear of violence
Yeah,
or
but you
anything
have
like
no
that.
idea what's happening to your actual body.
No, you're in the pod. It's locked.
Oh, you're in the lock.
And it could also be
Sensory deprivation.
They could also do it as
like in the
augmented.
Mitchells versus the Machines. Did you see that movie? That's actually a good.
Have you seen
Netflix.
Surrogates?
No.
Bruce Willis, you've seen it?
Yeah.
Everybody has a surrogate robot version of themselves. They don't leave their houses. They go in pods that control the robot, and the robot goes and does everything
Oh,
for
I
them.
had a friend of mine who's severely disabled who was telling me that he really wanted one of those.
Well, it's like an Avatar. The dude was paralyzed, so he got to be the,
The movie did a good job of presenting the creepiness of the robots, though. The robots were creepy
Oh, right.
in that movie.
Yeah. Plastic
Wow.
looking.
Yes.
And then there's the scene where it's like the hot chick is making out with the guy.
Yes.
And then gets killed. And they're like, let's go find the operator. And the operator's like a 400-pound morbidly obese
Right.
guy.
Right.
Yeah, that's the future. If we go surrogate, I think it'll be metaverse. Like building complex androids seems like too much
Metaverse would
work.
be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody has legs in the metaverse right now. Did you?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't
Really?
checked it out.
Yeah, there was. I've never gone in the metaverse or used the metaverse, whatever how you pronounce it or describe it. But there's no legs.
We really need
people
treadmill.
just float around.
Treadmills in the
That's
metaverse.
bizarre.
Yeah, VR
Yeah.
treadmills where you strap into like a bouncy
They have
harness. Yeah, but they're not quite good enough. I want smooth feet where I can run full speed and
They have
jump.
those. Have you
but
s-
but they're not. I haven't found a really good one. If you guys have a
bowl.
good one,
The
you
bowl.
tell me.
The one with the bowl.
Is it? I don't know.
It's got it's a bowl that's a touch screen, and you're wearing a waist harness that goes around your waist, and you run. And when you run, your character moves. I was at VidCon
Wow.
7 years ago, and they had it set up, and people were playing an FPS, a first-person shooter, and you're watching these people in these pods up high, and they're running full speed, strapped in, and then going like this and shooting at each other.
I've seen a lot of them, but they're only running like they can't have a full gait. Like they can't because the bases
Yeah,
aren't
yeah.
that big. Once you
Right.
can get it big enough where you can run full speed
They have
and jump and
they have
you
a
can
treadmill.
land without hurting yourself.
They have a treadmill that moves in all directions that you can run on.
Dude, and then you get haptic feedback, shirt, gloves, you can feel stuff hitting you. It's going to be
wild.
so good.
And you can
This-
feel other-
exercise.
and you can feel
Sounds
other
like
things
my
too, right?
You sure
pure
can.
hell. This sounds like hell to me.
And you can
Like
swim.
pure
Like
hell.
if you can go like prone and like swim kind of like where you're held, but then you got gravity. That's a big part of it is the underwater stuff is hard to mimic right now.
Right.
I think we need to bring back appreciation for the real world.
Yeah, I'd say go to a boxing ring, do
I'm
something
probably
real.
not going to do that, but
All right. Someone in the chat said that metaverse graphics is like PS2. Yes, it's not good, and it's because the lenses are high resolution but super zoomed in, so it can work.
Got it.
So we need to get to 16K resolution before it starts becoming better.
Did any of you do Second Life? Have you ever been in Second Life?
I remember.
I
Second
played
Life.
that one time
Yeah.
for a little bit, and it's kind of whatever.
I watched some gameplay footage of it.
I bought some land in Second Life and had a server in it for a while. I was experimenting with it. There were some universities that had put up like university areas where they were like actually
Yeah, I
doing
remember
lectures and stuff. It actually looks better than the metaverse
I had some
Yeah.
friends who were Italian architects, and they were obsessed with Second Life. They
because you
were,
could
like,
build
trying
stuff
to-
in there. Yeah.
I used to play World of Warcraft, and I
Sweet.
will tell you this.
Night Elf,
I was.
Human Rogue.
Human Rogue,
Night Elf Druid.
Human
What about
Rogue.
you?
Night Elf Druid.
Oh yeah, dude.
Most powerful in the whole
It's
game.
just so versatile.
Yes.
Well, the versatility was good.
Paladins are good too.
Yeah, they're amazing.
You know what?
Paladins are good. I think they're a little overpowered.
What I
Yeah,
always
they were
found
probably
funny
the
was
best.
that, like, when I would play Rogue and do PvP, I had no problem
you
with
guys used to
anybody.
piss me off.
But
Yeah, so-
people would complain that warriors were too strong and rogues couldn't kill them. So they patch it and make rogues stronger. And I'm just like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. Just because these people didn't know how to play.
Right.
But what happens is Blizzard keeps going in and seeing like, well, we gave them the tools to play the character properly, but they couldn't figure it out, so they're not having fun. So we better change the game to make it fun.
Right.
Just made it easier.
Oh,
It was
rogues are so deadly. I remember standing out with my night elf, shooting out arrows, to catch their invisibility, and you're
Just
like
aiming
shooting-
randomly?
just aiming
It's not gonna
randomly because
work,
I don't know
huh?
where they are, and they just keep backstabbing me over.
Oh,
and over.
and see, vanilla was the best with preparation, because then you'd like the bleeds. So like I never had a problem with warriors. You would just like you go up, you garrote, you hemorrhage, you
Right.
bleed, then you vanish.
Yeah.
Then you come. Then you
So
then you just
annoying.
then you just wait.
So annoying.
You wait as the warrior's screaming and swinging at nothing.
That was
and
me.
then once the bleeds go down, you go up and do it all over again. Then you prep. Then you vanish again. Then you wait. And I'm like, it's the easiest thing in the world. People complaining
The
about.
problem is because it's capture the flag. If it was just 1-on-1, you could
No, it
handle
was
a rogue.
1-on-1. What do you mean?
Well, I could handle a rogue 1-on-1, but I had a goal I had to go do, so I
When
had
you
to
were
forget
playing
about the
capture
guy
the flag.
behind me. Yeah, and I
So,
couldn't stay on the
anyway,
rogue. I
it
had
it was
to.
the invisibility. You didn't know where to attack.
They needed to be like
great.
shimmery so you could at least see them.
No, that ruins the part.
They changed Heroes of the Storm.
It
they
was
made
brutal,
Invis. Yeah,
absolutely brutal.
It was OP.
I can't believe we're like bonding over WoW here.
But here's
so
the
good.
thing,
Alarat
vanilla,
Pass, man.
vanilla, right before the release of Burning Crusade,
Right.
was the best it ever was. That's it. And then once Burning Crusade came out, it sucked. And then what was next? Like Wrath of the Lich King or something?
Yeah.
What was
Yes.
it? That I was done. I just stopped.
I liked flying.
It just
It's
did.
the last one I played was Wrath.
I think flying kind of ruined it. It used to be when you couldn't fly, there was so much to do,
Right.
and me and my friends would go glitch hopping and find all the exploits,
Yes.
and then risk getting banned and we get warnings. But we would go underneath Stormwind, and then because there was an area where you could glitch through the wall.
Yes, I remember
I used to
this.
go on top of Undercity, and they took all of that fun stuff away. It was like they created this universe that you could go into and play games and had missions, but there was also we'd look on the map and we'd be like, hey, has anyone ever realized this portion of the continent we've never been to?
Right.
We go there and there's no way in. So we start glitch hopping, basically jumping until we
Sure.
find a way to break through. And then we're in this big flat space with literally nothing in it. And
Right.
we're on the map. Then we message our friends being like, look where we are, look where. And then they took it all the way from us.
Did you get into the center of Duskwood? You know, there's that big where you see Stitches for the first time. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
There's that big like mountainous area in the middle.
Yeah.
Is there something in there?
I never found anything in there. I went
People are
all
calling us
around
soy
it.
boys for playing World of Warcraft.
But if you can fly, you could probably. I didn't fly, so you could probably go up there now.
It just ruined it. And that's why I think when people started releasing the vanilla versions, the classic, that people got really into it. And then Blizzard got mad and sent lawyers to shut them all down.
Right.
Then launched their version, you know. And I tried playing vanilla, and I'm like, they lost it, man. It's not there.
Yeah.
Like all of the fun shenanigans were just
I can only
lost.
harvest so many peace blooms until I want to blow my freaking brains out. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I could be making a TV show.
They need to stop doing expansions and literally just do WoW 2 and start a new game
Start
from
over.
scratch, which is something new and fresh. Because now the economy's ruined, the whole
Mm-hmm.
game makes no sense, and I just stopped playing it. I played Legion, and then I've played like every expansion, then given up really quickly. Like,
You know,
it's just
I
not there
I
anymore.
cannot find an MMO that's good. I think it's got to be the next evolution of video gaming, which is VR AR, where you are in it, the reality.
I really enjoy MMOs, but the cheating it just drives me away every time. Like, there's just so much cheating that goes on. I played DayZ, for example, a lot, and just like cheater after cheater after cheater.
Like aimbots.
I just give up. And they can see you through walls, and people doing like headshots from 200 meters with pistols. Yeah, it's all cheating.
We'll grab a couple more here.
Okay.
MF Damien says Rogan used to have a thick Boston accent and trained it out. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
He's got a
That's an
unique. He's
idea.
got a unique voice. It's like I don't know. Some people could probably do it. It's just some people are easier to impersonate than other.
A lot of it's the body structure of the body. So like, unless you have Rogan's body, you're not going to have that horny sound when it comes out of the mouth.
We got one more real quick. Todd B says, have you heard the insane idea that they are floating of using brain dead women as surrogates?
Yes.
No, I've not heard that.
News story. They said women who are brain dead could donate their bodies for surrogacy.
I did
There's
read
also
that this
the
morning.
idea. There's
Yeah.
also this really innovative idea where they're talking about taking the wombs from transitioned young girls and implanting them in men who want to have the full
heard it
female
won't work.
experience. It obviously won't work, but that didn't stop the NIH in the UK from putting a bunch of money behind this plan.
They keep saying it, but men don't have the pelvis for
No,
this.
obviously not. But the NIH was doing research and throwing money at it anyway.
It's like
All
the
right,
sex is a spectrum stuff. It's all nuts.
All right, everybody. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com to support our work directly. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Jeff, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, you can look for me on Twitter at JeffYoungerTX. You can also find me at my Substack, jeffyounger.substack.com, for long form stuff.
Right on.
I'm Libby Emmons. I am at Libby Emmons on Twitter, and you can check out what we're doing at thepostmillennial.com.
I love the post millennial.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Shout out to the post millennial.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Jeff, thanks for coming, man. That was
you,
awesome.
Ian.
I pray for your wife, your ex-wife, and your kids.
Thank
The
you,
best
brother.
for everybody involved. This is great.
Thank you.
It's really wonderful to see you, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
And I'm Serge.com. Sorry for the error today, guys. It was just had to grab the mic. I was trying not to talk too much, and I pressed the wrong button. It happens. Anyways.
All right, everybody. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for watching. We're going to have clips up all throughout the weekend, so you can watch those. And other than that, we will see you all back again Monday. But we're going to have, I think we're having some really big shows next week. Stay tuned. I think our Wednesday show, I can't say too much, but we'll be in a special location. That's what we're planning.
It'll be fun.
No guarantees. It's going to be a technical hurdle. Shouldn't be too complicated, but
We'll
it will
do it.
be crazy.
Yeah.
So let me just put it this way. I never like to announce guests because they might cancel. But we have like 5 potential very, very high profile people who might come in and out. So just we'll hopefully pull it off. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.
Cheers.